Hey, Judge.
I'm good.
There. Good. Ready?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin McAdam, and we are here at the meeting of the Distress Unit Appeal Board for our Monday, March 28th, 2022 meeting. This is our first meeting of 2022. It's good to be in person here with everyone. We're doing our best to integrate our technology and in-person meetings, so bear with us as we continue to work to make that a success. I will call the meeting to order and recognize that we have posted notice of the meeting in compliance with the open door law, and we do have a quorum here with us today. In addition to our members here in person, we have two additional members joining us via the web. We have Rebecca Kubaki and Tracy Brown joining us virtually today. As has been our custom, we will take public comment at the beginning of the meeting today. We have a number of individuals who have signed up to provide public comment, and we will call on you at that time. If there's anyone else who wishes to provide public comment who may be joining us virtually, please send a message via the chat box and we'll be sure to get you on the list here. Before we jump to the public comment, we will move to our minutes. We have our December 21, 2021 minutes from our public meeting on that day. Those have been circulated in advance of the meeting. Everyone's had a chance to review them, I trust. Are there any changes or adjustments that need to be made to those minutes? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of December 21st, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I'll call the roll. Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Think she hear us?
Rebecca?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tracy with the phone that we're trying to review.
Okay.
Ms. Brown?
Yes. Chair votes aye. So our minutes are approved. We will move to public comment. Do we have anyone else who has signed up electronically to provide comment today? Signed up is Denise Dillard. Just as a reminder for our public comment, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Where are we?
Yes, if,
To stand.
yes, please just stand. That would be, we don't have a podium, unfortunately.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Denise Dillard, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I know that there's a lot going on, a lot of discussions, and certainly this particular entity is really important that you hear all of the things that are concerns, but also all of the things that are happening. And so we want to talk to specifically myself. I'm an employer. I work with the hospitals. I represent a lot of the employers that are out here working with our school district. We've always worked with our school district. We've always been there to say, what do they need in terms of internships and getting them ready for the world of work. We have some concerns, obviously, when things are a bit chaotic. Thank you, COVID, which was definitely, but certainly in organizing and setting so that we're moving forward. Some of the things I'd like to speak to involve the referendum, which was 3 specific areas that myself became very involved with the school district on: the community engagement, the employer engagement, and parent engagement. And the reason is all of those are dealing with the issues of curriculum, the strategies that are moving forward. We've had some groups that have come in from our community. Dr. Michael McGee with the project of outreach and prevention on violence, because we know that a lot of our students, but also adults, are going through some behavioral issues right now. And those things are being looked at, not just to say, what is med or what is it that you have to do clinically, but what are some of the social effects that we need to talk about? What are some of the isolation impacts that are occurring? And it's not just in Gary, this is national. See, I've been all across the country, you know, and whether I'm in New York or whether I'm in Mississippi, we still have the same issues going on. So this is a continual discussion on how do we get our students and the boundaries we set as we're going back into structured situations. Another piece of that would be with one of the groups, Gary Alumni Pathway for Students. Our students are very much in need and getting a lot of community attention on after-school and in-school projects. We found that our students wanting to know more about what do I need to graduate? Because there's a big disconnect on virtual. Everyone doesn't have virtual and you don't have access in your homes. And our area is a desert where it comes with network and connectivity. So those issues are very strong for us, and it's very important for our families to have that kind of support. So when you talk about a hotspot is of no need if you don't have internet connection, if you don't have things to connect. So that's been a big piece. And Gary alumni came in with their own money. They didn't ask for money. They came in, these are graduates from West Side who came with checks, opened up bank accounts. So I think that right now they have acquired over $1 million in writing grants. This one nonprofit that said, we're only here to help West Side students so that they know what to have when they graduate. And working with the school district, we were able to sit down with counselors, we were able to sit down with principals, we were able to sit down with building maintenance, because we need to be in the buildings. Trying to get them back and forth was difficult. So when we talked to the school administrators, we said, can we come into the schools? And they said, absolutely, what do you need? So we have a program at the Career Center, which is working with students that, about 100 students who just were at the edge of graduation. But
You could just-
something else. Wrap it up, okay?
Thank you.
Takes 3 minutes to introduce.
Sit down.
I'm sorry, but certainly this engagement piece is a big deal for us. Employers, I know the hospitals, I know manufacturing, I've been with the trades, I've been working with operation engineers. You know, there's a lot that is going on and a lot that's still there. There's no doubt, no doubt. But we want to make sure that you understand it didn't break in a day and it won't get fixed in a day. So we are looking at how do we move forward collectively. There's some differences, we understand that. But we do want to make sure that all of us have a day in court. All of us have an opportunity to say, what do we need to do to get to the next level? Not for everyone who wants to keep controls of various things, but because we want the best for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Next, we have Ms. Portia Horn. Pronounce that correctly? All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Portia Horn. I'm an parent of 3 kids that attend Gary Community School, 1 in middle school and 2 at elementary. I like the fact that I feel welcome when I walk into my kids' school. Safety has definitely improved. They were forced to show ID. I love that, especially with everything that's going on with kids nowadays. The upkeep of the facility, they're improving. There can be a little bit more, of course, but for the most part, they have improved over the years. I want to give a shout out to Ms. Jones, who's over my cat, and Ms. Mills family. They're doing an awesome job for kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Carmen James.
Hello, everyone. I too am a parent of a student in Gary Middle School. I am here to give kudos to this beautiful young lady who is making moves and progress, showing action as we're getting parents involved. If you don't know her, get to know Miss Tennille Gibson.
Thank you. Let's see, next we have Dawn Jones.
I'm Dawn Jones.
Hi.
I'm here in double capacity. I'm a parent of a middle schooler at Gary Middle School. for visual performing arts, and I'm also a base liaison in the elementary at Banner Marquette. I'm just here to say that although there could be, it is room for growth, but what I've seen so far is coming from the parent perspective. I think that things are going in the right direction as far as what I see how my son is doing in the school. There is some growth that can be done, but I think we're going in the right direction. I know everybody will never agree on everything, and that's understandable because if we all agree that there'll never be a change, there'll never be growth. But the direction that we're going in is a good direction coming from the parent perspective. Coming from an employee, also there could be more changes made, but I think we're starting to take the correct steps in getting things back to where it used to be, because I've been in the system for a while. I raised 3 of my sisters in the Garrett Community School Corporation, and it was different back then. They graduated from DUAB in 2002 and 2003, and it was a lot more involvement for students. It was a lot more activities going on, and I think because part of it is the pandemic, but a lot had to do with things falling by the wayside. But now I think if we all get back on the same page and go back in the direction that we're going in, I'm starting to see more things come along, because my son is thriving over at the middle school. He's doing big things, and he'll be going to West Side where he can continue to do big things. I was one of those parents that was ready to pull my kid out of the Garrett Community School Corporation, but I was taught them to stay in, and I'm glad that I did, because I do see things going in that direction.
Thank you. Next, we have Janae Jones. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Janae Jones, and a state liaison for the community school board. I have a son at Westside High School. I'm very proud of the sports programs that he's involved in. He's involved in baseball, basketball, and football. And I just want to say that I'm happy that you are making improvements toward the sports, the fields, and everything that's going on at Westside. So I appreciate you. And I want to shout out Ms. Millsap. She is an awesome boss, and she is an awesome parent advocate. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Doris Porter.
Hi, my name is Doris Porter. I am an employee and a past parent of students that went to GSC. And I am proud to say that whenever there is a situation, I call the face liaisons, the fixers. Because whenever it seems like anything is going wrong, they call upon us. And we're willing to help in any capacity. First, we're dealing basically with the parents. And I like the way that they're giving us more opportunities to work with our parents. Because I'm a firm believer that if parents knew better, they would do better. And I really believe that. And I like the idea that the community comes in and we help and we work with them. You can ask Dr. Smith. I've worked with him before when he comes into the school with different programs and things. And our hands are always willing to work with whoever needs something, whether it's the parent, the administrator, and definitely our babies. Because my children have graduated and going on, but I consider all 520 as my little darlings. And I'm there to help whenever I can. So I'm glad for this opportunity, and I'm especially glad that we have a leader like Ms. Millsap, that whenever the need comes up or there's a question, Niger came, we dial her number, and she magically gets to working on it, and before you know it, there is a solution. So this is all I have to say for today.
Thank you, Ms. All right, next up we have Ms. Tyndall.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Mrs. Lavetta Tyndall, and I'm from Gary, Indiana, and I have several concerns and many concerns.
MGT is malfunctioning and DUAB's failure to remove MGT indicates that DUAB, the State Board of Education, and the governor support MGT and its ongoing failure. How do you plan to improve the academic status of Gary students? That's my question. One of my questions. What is learning readiness and structure for the success of Gary students? You didn't put a transitional clause in place as part of the takeover. No plan for life readiness for our Gary students was in place or considered. What's the strategy for raising the academic achievement of our students and creating an environment conducive to a high quality and equitable learning condition? Show us the plan. That's our request from Gary. Show us the plan. Create a plan and show us the plan. Your plan so far has been abusing monies, making our kids stupid, and giving no healthy experience for learning. DUAB, you and MGT, with over 5 years of failure, you continue to have no appreciation for our students, no appreciation for the need for them to learn, and no appreciation for the need for wholesome, healthy, non-self-serving appreciation for our children. MGT needs to be replaced now. An active transitional plan needs to be put in place now, not June 30th of this year or later. Westside Learning Academy needs to be repaired so kids don't walk between containers placed to collect water from hanging tiles and leaking ceilings. We need you to promote and provide A+ teaching. We need you to fix the tiles. We need you to replace the roof, put doors on the restroom stalls, provide paper, soap for all restrooms throughout the city of Gary, Indiana. Schools. Employ certified teachers. Put men in leadership positions, more men. Put male students on your posters advertising the Gary Community School Corporation. Realize that our kids can't be what they don't see. Provide interpreters for the non-English speaking students and provide counselors when fellow students meet their death, tragically or otherwise. Please hear this. Poor academic performance, all the negatives, and your complacency and passive position is contributing to these trends. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tindall. Next, we have Tracy Coleman. I believe she's joining us virtually. We can hear you now.
Thank you. I want to address some of the issues going on. I'm a parent who has a staff that attends Westside Leadership.
Ms. Coleman, we can't hear you. Just one moment. It looks like you're unmuted. Ms. Coleman, can you hear us?
Parents attended the State Board of Education meeting where we
Ms. Coleman, I believe we're having a connection issue. It appears that you are cutting in and out. So we're going to move to the next person.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Can I give my time back?
Go ahead and start. We'll try one more time.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tracy Coleman. I'm a parent who has a child that attends Westside Leadership Academy. On March 3rd, 22, I want to bring to DUAB's attention that the students staged a walkout. And as a parent, it's still very unnerving and hurtful that in America, our students staged a walkout because of a lack of toilet paper, water, and conditions that I would consider inhumane. And I want to let the board know October 2nd, 2019, we had parents speak before the State Board of Education where we brought attention to the issues of the missing stall doors, the conditions at Westside. And at the end of February, we staged a prayer vigil because honestly, at this point, I'm trusting in God. Because as an American citizen, someone who's lived in Africa, I am still unnerved on a daily basis of what our children are going through in Gary, Indiana. And so I want to ask that the state board, that DUAB, that MGT needs to go. You know, as a lawyer, we do something called voir dire. When you understand that that individual has biases and prejudices where they can't be fair and impartial, you're able to just get it out so that person can leave. At this point, let's just be honest. You look at Westside, 6.2% that's passing English and math. You look at Bailey Middle School, 0.3% that can pass both. You look at Gary Middle School, 0.6% that pass both. There comes a point as Americans who want a country where we have a strong educational system, we have to admit that it's not working. And what's happening to me as a parent, to my child, to the students, it's a failure. And it's a failure that now MGT wants to write all these plans and spend this money when their track record shows that we're on the same course as Roosevelt. Roosevelt, by the time Edison left, there were schools and grades that were at 0% passing. And we see that at Beveridge. Anytime you get to 0%, that's a crisis. So at this point, once again, we just have to face reality. There's something not clicking where I can't communicate as a parent with Dr. Page to say, hey, at our October 8th, 2021 budget meeting, the restrooms are horrible. You have not addressed it in your capital plan, because I would hope as a woman, as a parent, she would not want her daughter to go to a bathroom where there's no stall doors, there's no toilet paper. But there's such a disconnect that we can't solve the problems because it becomes a PR campaign. And I'm asking DUAB, I'm asking, as Americans, as looking at our children as human beings, please stop this. Get IUN involved. Even, and I'll just mention this one thing for the seniors. A lot of the activities like Dave and Buster's was cut out. And so you really have a lot of kids that have been through a lot with the pandemic. One thing, if please,
Ms. Coleman, if you
let's
could,
go to Great America. And if I could
Ms.
wrap
Coleman,
it
if you
up.
could wrap up, we're off, you're over your time.
Thank you, I'm sorry, but yes, I will wrap it up, but I will leave. Our children are beautiful. Principal Harad, Dr. McNulty, please sit down with these children. Don't let this year end in crisis. Recognize what's going on. Let us take on the Great America. Let's get the academics, the field house, the capital improvement plans. Please step back, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And what I saw presented to DUAB, we're about to blow it. And that's not fair for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Next, we have Mr. Dwight Gardner joining us electronically.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
My name is Dwight Gardner. I'm the pastor of the Trinity Baptist Church of Gary, Indiana, and I serve on the civic committee of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Gary, Indiana, which was a staunch supporter of the referendum. A couple of things I want to say up front. Number one is that my colleagues and I are all in favor of local control. But that being said, you cannot deny the improvements and the advancements that have occurred, particularly under the last local or the present local consideration. Everything from upgrades in the sports facilities to the cleanliness of the buildings. In a number of ways, we have actually moved forward. As we look at the concept of local control, what is really needed, in my opinion, at this time, is a collaborative effort. Locally, it is as if there are two fighters who have come out of their corners and war in the middle of the ring only to return to their separate corners. And the end result of that is that nothing is really working the way it ought to in reference to community collaboration and
Mr. Gardner, we lost you a moment, just a second.
be done without the involvement of the state of Indiana. We need to work together to move the Gary Community School Corporation forward. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. We appreciate that. Next, we have two students who have signed up to testify. Mariah Swain, I think, is joining us electronically as well. Just a moment, Ms. Swain, while we identify your phone.
I don't.
Ms. Swain, is that you? Ms. Swain? Ms. Swain?
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest that maybe ask her the first three digits of her?
Well, I will have her message.
Can you do Karen Jones? I'll do Karen Jones.
Karen Jones.
Okay.
Next, we'll come back. Ms. Swain, and then we also have Caleb Cheatham signed up as students. If you could please, in the chat box, or somehow communicate your phone number to us, we'll be able to identify your line and we'll come back around to you. Before that, we'll move to, what was the name of the
Karen Jones.
Karen Jones.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Karen Jones. I am the Executive Director of the YWCA of Northwest Indiana. And thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak to you this afternoon. I just want to express how excited the YWCA is to have a partnership with the Gary Community School Corporation. We're about to begin our after-school program. Of course, you guys know we haven't had after school in the Gary Community Schools for years. And through the REACH grant, we are able to do this. I am just super excited because after school matters. After school matters to our students because this gives them extra time to have homework tutoring. We're also offering enrichment classes. We're going to teach our young people how to swim. We're giving swim lessons since we have the only indoor pool in Gary. Hopefully the school will have one soon. We will be doing Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. We'll also be doing arts and crafts and hip hop dance, but most of all, the children will have a safe haven that they can be at, especially when parents have to work. And I just want to thank Dr. McNulty and her team for working with us to make this happen. It is so important. And the last thing I'll say is this: after school matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Are we able to identify Ms. Swain or Mr. Cheatham? We are not. Okay. All right, well, thank you for those comments, and we appreciate everyone joining us here today. We will move to our next item of business, which is an update from Dr. McNulty about the Gary Community School Corporation.
Yes, and I'm really excited to be here in person. It's been a while since we have been able to see each other face to face. I have lots to share. You should have several months of reports in front of you, so I will go through them kind of systematically so that we can make sure that we highlight the necessary things that have been happening. I'm going to start back with December highlights. To talk about that our district recently had an audit on our ECA accounts, which hadn't been done in a while. And I'm very happy to report that all of our schools received a great report and no issues were found from that audit, Mr. Joyce. Smile from.
Take care of that next
We did a little smile. I can't believe it.
Very good job.
So anyway, our chief financial officer and her team did an outstanding job putting all that in place and making sure that protocols have been followed. Also, we're making sure that all of our employees are receiving evaluations to ensure effective feedback that will support continued growth. Historically, secretaries, maintenance staff, and school-based administrators had not been evaluated consistently. So our administrative team has made a conscious effort to ensure that all of the evaluations are done systematically each year with staff members. You've heard me talk in the past about the Neola policy updates. This has turned out to be a much bigger project than we had anticipated. My goal was to have it done by August of this school year. We have worked diligently on that, and we are just now finishing it here in the last couple of months. It was over 20,000 policies that were 20 years old. So we have employed Neola, which works with all the schools pretty much in the state of Indiana to help you get your policies up to date. This is one of those things that will be important as the transition happens for local controls, so to know that there is updated policies in place at the school district. But again, it made every director had to take those policies, go through them line by line, update them, make sure they're pertinent to our school district, and then get them vetted through Neola and our attorneys. So we now have a 20,000 page policy handbook that will be going out here shortly, but we are excited that that's done and off our plates, I can assure you. We also recently had a Sodexo food audit, and while we're awaiting the finalized report, I don't think we have the finalized one, right? We did get the preliminary report back that they were very happy and that we had made significant improvements. We have assigned a food service manager for the Gary Community Schools who monitors daily the food quality and invoices, etc. We have much fewer findings, and we look forward to being able to share that report at our next meeting with you. Moving on to the January report. I'm going to talk just briefly about our iReady assessment data because I know that's part of our academic action plan that we're going to be sharing here shortly. But we did administer the beginning of the school year assessment and our winter assessment, and we have seen significant growth at both our reading and our math. And in several areas, those scores more than quadrupled. So we're really excited to be able to share that here in the next few minutes with you. I also want to talk in a minute about special education. I'm going to turn that over to you.
Okay. Is it okay to show the slide? Okay, all right, so it's up on the main screen. So we wanted to do some bragging on our kids and our staff that work with our students with disabilities and our families as well. This definitely is a team effort. So we recently got the results-driven accountability results back from DOE that speak to our compliance and data with our kids with disabilities. And as many of you know, there's lots of pieces that go into running a special ed program well. Not to say that, we are, mission accomplished. We have a lot of work to go, but we do want to celebrate the wins, and we definitely see this as one. So our most recent score that we got went to a 93% on compliance. which, those of you who are in the citing grades, are definitely solid in the A category. We moved from those prior scores which were quite a bit lower. A previous year, the first year that the state did this model, we got 43%. And so the state has used this model for only 4 years. Prior to that, they didn't issue these types of performance reports. So we're definitely pleased to go from a 43 to a 93 with progress with our kids, and then look forward to continued and further progress there.
So great job to the special education department. I know that's been some growing pains. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what do you attribute the improvement to? Nice job, by the way.
Thanks.
What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, so, as our leader of our special ed department, I would be remiss not to thank my team. I think we've got a lot of good people that work for us. I think so it's definitely not a Nathan celebration, it's not. But I think definitely this past year that I've been there, we've placed a lot of attention on doing the right thing every day, every time. Do we always get it correct? No. But people know that they can call us when they have issues. We set up case conferences, and we've really paid a lot of attention because this is the compliance report. And if you can't get compliance right, you can't get excellence right either. And so we had to start here. So really it was just an emphasis on what are we required to do in tracking and monitoring the data. I think a lot of trying to get audits right, a lot of financial pieces, IEP compliance, making sure we meet with families on time, having the right staff. We've invested a ton in getting the right people in place with the right licenses so that not just, leadership knows what they're doing, but teacher level know what they're doing. Getting kids in the right classes, research shows that kids with disabilities usually learn best when they're integrated with their peers. And we had to make huge gains there. So it's a bunch of levers we had to pull, and we looked at every single one and started pulling them.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
let me follow up.
Sure.
The results you just gave, that's not academic growth with these students, right? That is procedural if you're complying with the mandates for the dollars that we receive.
Right, so there's two parts, and I think, so yes, these are compliance reports, but I would argue that before you can even get academics right, if you don't even have an IEP that's up to date for a kid, if you aren't meeting with the families, if you don't
I'm
have
not disputing that, just clarifying, because it might give up the impression for those persons who are not familiar with this process to think that's academic progress, and it's not.
So it definitely is very closely intertwined. But
Oh, yeah, same things with management and supervision.
Mhm.
You're not gonna have improvement in instruction to increase student learning if you don't have good management in it. So I understand the two go hand in hand, but I felt we need to clarify that because it might give people the impression that these students are performing better than our general education students.
Right. And I think academic performance, this slide doesn't speak to that, but we are going to get to that next, and we're pleased to show some progress there too.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, but thank you again to the team and all the special education teachers are doing a fantastic job. We have worked in collaboration with the union this year to create our 2022-23 school year calendar, which has been shared on our district website and with our families. And we continue to drive academic progress by dedicating a half a dozen days to teacher and staff development for next school year again, which is an increase from what they've had in the years previous. We've also opened up our student information system Skyward to allow families to start the enrollment process for next school year and have been advertising that as well. In addition to working with our union, we've also been working with the leadership team of the Gary's union leadership team and also the Gary faith-based leaders. We've been meeting on a pretty regular basis so that we can continue to have common ground and have positive conversations towards academic growth as we move forward for next school year. We continue to have our referendum ambassadors meeting, as mentioned by Ms. Denise Diller. We met again here in the last several weeks. We had a nice turnout, and we continue to talk about the ESSER dollars, the title dollars, 1065, and the referendum dollars, because it does get confusing. We were able to talk with them about the suggestions that they had given us at the last meeting and share with them many of the suggestions that have already been implement it, and then continue on with getting more information from them so that we can share that at the next meeting with them. Parent negotiations have started, and we're anticipating a productive and positive outcome, and we'll keep you updated as that moves along. Summer school has been scheduled for this summer. We're going to continue on with the 2 cohorts like we did last summer. We're going to have 2 for the high school so that we have 2 opportunities for those high school seniors that need extra time for credit recovery and or credit acceleration as they move through their high school career. We're also opening up for the 8th grade students so that they can take high school classes and get advanced credits as they move into the high school as well. And then we have the 6-week session going for the elementary and middle school students. We're also excited to announce that we were one of 20 school districts that applied for an EARN grant, and we were accepted. This grant enables our students to be able to work through our career technical education program, the CTE program, and partner with businesses from our community. And the community business who works with us gets paid half that student's salary for the summer so that they have more opportunity to start a pipeline for their businesses and internships. So we already have, I think, 3 companies that have signed up with us. The Railcats was the first one that took advantage of that. And they are going to be employing, I believe, 16 of our students. Those students will learn anything from groundskeeping to culinary to hospitality, those types of workplace experiences. And then we have another company called Sunset that has signed on with us, and they are a company that builds parts for Tesla and other small manufacturing companies in our area. And they're planning on taking 20 or so of our students. So we're really excited about that opportunity. We are looking for more businesses to sign on with us as we move forward. Okay, moving on to February. Our high school students have been participating in college tours, scholarship fairs, and multiple sessions to assist them with their FAFSA paperwork and applications. We've had lots of partnerships that have helped us with this. The Urban League has been fantastic in coming into our school and helping students with their essays and helping them get their paperwork submitted. They've been a wonderful partnership. We've also had a great partnership with the Gary Literacy Coalition. I had the opportunity to read with them as they came through the schools for Read Across America. We read lots of books to kiddos that day. It was a wonderful day for the kids. All the kids left there with bags of books to take home. And as we were talking about special education, we're happy that we're going to be announcing that we're hosting our first home track meet on our new track. And our first home meet is going to be with our new unified track team. And again, that's a track team that will be comprised of special education students and regular education students, and they'll be competing against other districts in Northwest Indiana. And they're going to be our very first home meet in the next couple of weeks. So we're really excited about that. Celebrations. Westside Academy's debate team participated in a mock trial recently along with surrounding high school students in Northwest Indiana. And we're proud to say that our team won with the following distinctions. We won round 1 for best attorney, which is awesome. Round 3 for best attorney and round 1 for best witness. In addition, Williams Elementary students published a book, and we've purchased them here for you today. We're going to give you each a book because we think that they did a fantastic job. We want to make sure y'all have one. And this was these are ongoing projects that are happening at all of the elementary schools. Also, Ben's Bailey STEM Academy will have their state visit to become STEM certified in the next month. Students and staff are excited to share their efforts around project-based learning. And you got your book. Is there anything else I want to mention? They get the glasses back. I think that's it. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have at this time. I know I've said a lot.
Well, thank you, Dr. McNulty. Appreciate your update here today.
Mr. Chairman, I have questions. I was gonna hold you finish your whole report. Are you finished?
I'm finished with that portion. We have lots more like the academic plan to share and ESSER.
I have questions on the ESSER report.
Yep, I have one question first.
Okay.
So during the public comment, we heard about this before, reference to conditions of the schools, bathrooms, toilet paper availability, soap dispensers, leaking. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'd like to say that we did not have a walkout at the school. I would consider that an adult-led disruption, unfortunately. And it was less than 20 students who participated in that. And as soon as we invited them to come back in and speak with us, they did so. We are looking at this as a positive way for us to continue to have good conversations with students. We have student ambassadors that meet with us regularly, student council that meets with us weekly, and we're encouraging students to continue to have those positive conversations in an appropriate manner. It was unfortunate that the small adult-led disruption that happened on an SAT day, and we had to invalidate at least 5 tests that day, which is, again, in my opinion, not the appropriate thing to do. We want to sit down and talk with students if they have any concerns whatsoever. We want to sit and talk with them. And in fact, we have initiated Cougar conversations since that point. And have probably had, I don't know, 5 or 6 meetings with those students and their parents. I would tell you that probably 5% of the conversations was surrounding bathrooms. The rest of it was, hey, we want to have more electives at the school. We were like, so do we. That's a good conversation. What kind of electives are you looking for? Let's see if we can make that happen. We want to have more FaceTime with our counselors. Great, so do we. Let's talk about how to make that happen. The bathrooms were 5% of the conversation. We have roughly 18 bathrooms at West Side, and I'm gonna say out of the 18, 8 doors are missing. So when you walk into a bathroom, you're not seeing all doors missing. There's one stall with a bathroom door missing that has been ordered, and we're waiting for it to come. But the bathrooms are in working order, they're clean, there's paper towels, there's toilet paper, etc.
And I know we've been working diligently to address leaky roofs and other things.
Yes.
Is
The
Does that
roofs
stay?
are fixed, they are not leaking. Yeah, we would invite you to come and take a tour. There's no leaking happening at the West Side High School.
we will probably take you up on that.
Yeah, I would love that.
We're due for a trip.
Yes.
So thank you. Representative Smith?
I have some follow-up questions on that issue that you just discussed, but I wanted to go through her report, and I had several concerns that I would like to express, or questions I would like to seek additional information. When I'm on page 4, you have frequently asked questions. It seems like these are individual questions and not frequently asked questions. It's just one person asked you and you responded to them. Do you get questions that overlap, that where they do become frequent versus these individual questions that you responded to?
Yeah, any question that's posted, whether it's asked multiple times or one time, we include it in the packages so that for full transparency.
Okay, but you will agree that these are individual questions that you responded to, not frequently.
Again, if they were asked 5 times, we would have listed it 5 times.
Okay, well, you only have it on, I don't see any frequency on there, but I just wondered if these are major concerns. On page 5, you call this a curriculum report. Curriculum deals with what shall we teach, but you're covering all kinds of things in this report, which is not applicable to the term curriculum. You got testing data in here, and I have a question about that. I understand from teachers that contacted me that during the second testing where you've indicated there's growth, that the administrators were given a directive that any student that did not score higher than what they did on the first test, the fall test, that we were to test them over again and reset that score. Now, I understand from talking to Pete Miller, our executive director, that he found indications of that in the data that was provided, but not overwhelming. I don't know if he's completed that since we talked on Friday, but I am concerned about that. We want a real picture of what our students are doing, because you cannot solve a problem unless you know there is a problem. And if you're covering up data or polishing up data, that concerns me greatly.
Yeah, so to start with, that I'm going to say that's emphatically not true. There's absolutely no test irregularities that are happening. Now, if you're talking about previously to our administration in 2017.
No, I'm talking about the most recent
Okay,
test.
but I'm here to tell you absolutely not
So
happening.
nobody was instructed.
Nobody was instructed. What was instructed per the test is if there was a student that only logged in for 2 minutes or less, they have to take the test over because it's invalidated. So that meant that if Paige got on, I was the student, I went all the way down the multiple choice, and they say that's an invalid test, and you were only logged in for 2 minutes, and then the test proctor is told to take the test again. And that's everywhere, that's not just for Gary, and we had a handful of students that happened to, or for. But we absolutely did not say that student didn't score well enough, make them take that again. And this is a formative assessment, by the way, so that wouldn't make sense. So I would say absolutely that's not true.
Your progress is based on assessments of what you're doing assessment. Now, it's not the summative evaluation, because that won't come until, I guess, this month, next month.
Correct, that's right.
Okay, but that concerned me that, and it wasn't just one teacher, but several teachers indicated. Now, Mr. Miller indicated to me, and I don't know if he's going to say it in the public, but I'm gonna say it, that he found some cases where that was the case, where there were second testing. I don't know if that's applicable to this issue or not.
Yes. Okay, so second testing is different from if a score is too low, take it again and get a higher score. Those are two different things. So what Dr. McNulty stated is that if the student took a second test, it was because the computer, they were not on the test long enough. That did occur, and that is protocol for that test.
Okay, explain me the difference between reset, because they're not long enough, compared to second testing.
So these are computer-based tests that are individualized. So if the student takes a test, logs on and logs directly off, the student has to be put on that test again in order to get accurate data.
I understand that. That's not the issue I'm talking about. I'm talking about they stayed on there adequate amount of time.
That didn't happen.
Scores did not happen.
No.
Okay,
Representative, I would like to let
yeah.
Pete speak briefly to.
Yeah,
We
go ahead.
take that issue seriously and appreciate that you raised that.
And I've raised it with you several times, and I think the members of the,
But I'd like to give Pete an opportunity just to speak to his.
To be clear, when we had a briefing for this call last week, I explained that I had access to individual data and was looking at those examples.
Right.
And the explanation I had before was, that it was every task. And, I guess they were at spring break last week, so I didn't have an opportunity to kind of confirm the data I was seeing. And this is still under evaluation. I just want to make sure that all these can be accounted for. So, yeah, some accounted for. There's a handful, I think, as I indicated, that I didn't see a flag. But again, that it's a little premature to make an assessment of what the reason was. But we have those, and we're going to work with them to identify each and every one.
And let me clarify, I didn't say you found overt or useful. I said you found some. That's what I said.
I said I found some. I did have an explanation.
No, I didn't hear him say he found some. I heard him say he had some questions on some. And I just want to make sure we clarify.
And he did.
Dr. Smith, just 1 second. I want to say, we appreciate that concern, and it is an important one. It's one we want to follow up on and are following up on, and we will continue dialogue with the team to understand the nature of that situation. Obviously, that would be a concern, and, you know, we've had some conversations with them already, and we have discussed it already, and we'll circle back with you on that as well.
My concern is that my community wants some growth. And we know that.
We do.
Well, I know, and I believe you do, and I know there's some members here who have expressed that when I was on the board before. But we're concerned about you're getting misinformation, and if that's the case, if it's not the case, it's fine. But I feel like I'm the voice for those people who have no voice.
Yeah.
And for the teachers who are supposed to be teaching now, hopefully they are. And they come and call me with their concerns about that. And they understand that they want adequate information about what the students are. But since this is still being investigated, I'll move on to my next topic, which is under enrollment.
Well, and I do appreciate that, and we agree with you. We want to see the same, we want to see the same outcomes in terms of academic growth in the students. We want to have clean, reliable data. And so it is something that we have already been dialoguing on before, even before those concerns. We are constantly, the team can attest that we ask them a lot of questions, probably more than they'd like us to ask from time to time, to ensure that, we are approaching things in a methodical, rigorous way, and we'll continue to do that. So appreciate you bringing that, and I don't want you to think that anyone is dismissing that concern, and completely understand that you are coming from a perspective from the community and sharing those concerns, and that is incredibly valuable to us, and I appreciate you doing it.
Okay.
And just to put a pin on, I'm sorry, it's just we take test integrity very seriously, and it would involve teachers' licenses and administrative licenses. So I encourage you, if you have information, you need to also contact
Well,
us because
the morale, the teacher morale is it.
I disagree.
And, well, I believe it is, okay. It's my belief, and you can walk by it's burning knowledge, okay, that I'm sharing with you. But I hear it over and over again, there's fear of people about their jobs. And that has come through this process that the state created, and maybe gave MGT too much authority, or one person too much authority. But let's move on from that. I'm going to talk about enrollment, which is on page 5 also. You're indicating here that you have a campaign that's going on, and you are asking parents so that you know whether their children will be returning next year. I'm wondering, and you said you're going to look at new and returning student enrollment, which will begin in June and culminate with the registration fair this summer. My concern is that in any situation, there is no status quo. You're either progressing or regressing. And so when you get this data from parents who will indicate to you that they are going to transfer the students out of really thinking about it, what do you do about it? I don't see that in your report. We've talked in the past about exit surveys to find out where the people, so we fix the problem, so we won't continue the leakage. And what are we doing to address the concerns that I think that you probably are aware of, where people have come and they can't get access, and that causes them to want to leave? What are you doing to prevent people from leaving, as well as you identify that there's a desire? What do you do? And a lot of people who are dissatisfied won't even tell you they're going to leave, they're just going to leave. What are you doing to follow up with those parents who don't respond?
Yeah, good question. And I know you and I have talked about this before. So we have the intent to return happening right now. We've had hundreds of parents who have already filled that out and submitted that. If we have a parent that are saying that they're not coming back for whatever reason, our wonderful face liaisons who you heard from today actively reach out to those families as well as our administration so that we can have a conversation with them to see what's going on, what can we do better, what is the issue, are you moving, are you upset with something at the school? But hopefully we're not waiting till that end point to have that conversation. We're having those conversations all along the way, that it's not a surprise at the end. We are inviting our parents in all the time. I personally meet and have a parent breakfast with parents all the time. Any parent can come. Sometimes I have 10, sometimes I have 50. This depends on the day. But we have pancakes with Paige on a regular basis where parents come in and speak with me about a whole host of topics.
I have suggested, and not that you have to take my suggestions, I think it's a good one, it's a valid one, that we do more while we got them to keep them rather than once we lost them trying to get right back. And I've talked with you about engaging the community in that process as you identify people who are entertaining taking the children out. Have you reached out to anybody? I know you haven't, and all the legislators agreed to be a part of this process. They haven't been contacted. Have you
reached out as far as enrollment?
Well, no. If you identify a child, and the first gate is, of course, the teacher to try to what the family say. The second gate will be the administration of that building. And then we said the community, the third step towards trying to keep them there. have you done anything in engaging the community in talking to parents who may be considering to leave so that we will be effective in keeping our students?
Yeah, so we work with Denise Dillard's group to do that. We worked with the Urban League to do that. We work with the pastors who have been very instrumental in doing that. I meet with the pastors every 2 weeks now. And so they have helped adopt students, mentor students who are, we think are, on the bubble of either leaving or dropping out of school. So yes, we have engaged with lots of different groups to help us with that process. And we have.
I would like to, because I like to have an indicator whether we're going in the right direction or not. I would like to see those, data on those parents who have indicated they're thinking about leaving, what was done, how many were convinced, at what level, those 3 levels, at the instructional level with the teacher, at the building level with the principal, at the 3rd level with somebody community situation.
I'd like to add too, I think data speaks a lot here, and you talk about a decade of decline of enrollment. For the first time, last year at this time, Gary had an increase of student enrollment, which I think is super telling, like, are the initiatives that we're doing, are they working? And I think parents vote with their feet and they go elsewhere if what we're doing is not working. And I think, the pandemic impacted a ton of urban schools, but I think when you talk about for the first time in over a decade, that Gary schools had an increase of enrollment, I think speaks to, the initiatives that Dr. McNulty is talking about, that what we're doing is having some positive impact.
Well, I would hope that's the case, but this is a 2-pronged process. Every plan can be made better, because none of us are smart as all of us. If we have the same mission in mind, and I'd like to think we do have the same mission in mind. So it's a 2-pronged approach. Keep those that you got, and get some more that you don't have. And I'm concerned about us keeping what we have, so that we have room for progression. Otherwise, you're fighting against the tide. Man, if you do, if you're going to do it, and you end up maybe on the positive side, but you haven't gotten where you could be on it. I hear complaints not just about the Gary Community School Corporation. I hear about the charter schools as well, where teachers as well as parents are concerned. And so they have the same problems. I know there's some dissatisfaction in the weeds, and we can bring them to which I think the Gary Community School Corporation is better than all of them. Okay.
We agree.
And I'm just thinking, it's tongue in cheek, because it made me wonder something out there. I want, and I hope and you know that I will not silence my tongue. I'm going to say what I believe. When I say what I say, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm trying to make you better, so that we keep our students. Because charity starts at home and spreads abroad. I don't want to see the Gary Community School Corporation beat up as it's being beat up on. And I think we're part of the problem. The legislature has been part of the problem. And I think MDT has been part of the problem. I think Dr. McNulty has been part of the problem. But the bottom line, and maybe I'm part of the problem, but the bottom line is, if we don't get to the source of the problem, we won't get the change that we want.
Well, I welcome your partnership, Chair. I know
I'm not so sure that's the case, but let's move on to.
you and I have agreed to meet, so I look forward to it.
And also under, on page 7, well, we've already dealt with the reset. But it is on page 7, you talked about professional development. What is the focus of this professional development? You said there's a half a dozen days. A plan, is that before school year's out or the summer plan? And what's the focus?
So we're doing professional development over the summer. If teachers want to come in, they'll get paid for that. But the professional development, the 6 days will come next year. That was built into the school calendar. Some of the professional development that we are doing, for example, is Meckins, which is not a new initiative, but it's a fairly new initiative to Gary, which is focusing on differentiated instruction, rigor in the classroom, that type of stuff. We continue our PD on instructional technology in the classroom. We continue it on behavioral interventions, a whole host of,
Our reading, our math. new curriculum that we've got.
Yeah, we got, as you know, new math and reading. We're also looking to adopt science and social studies next. So those teams of teachers are working and we piloting those programs and making some recommendations to us.
Okay, is there any, focus on your weaknesses, what your weaknesses are? And are you being prescriptive in trying to address those weaknesses? And that's done on one-to-one, but teachers have weaknesses. That's done in small groups that have common weaknesses. That's done when you have weaknesses that overcome or that's infused throughout your school.
Right.
That's when you have PD. Is there any prescriptive? Programs are being brought in. I understand you bring in new programs, but is there any effort with PD to deal with the weaknesses that you have?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yes, globally, we're doing all those PD that I just mentioned, but individually, we have hired instructional coaches for each building. So they have reading and math instructional coaches who are working individually with teachers. So because everybody's got their own strengths and areas of growth, right? And so some of the things we've been talking about with our teachers for next school year is that much like when we go to the church, pastors deliver a wonderful, service, but they practice that, right? You have to practice your delivery. And so we've talked a lot with our teachers about that you need to videotape your classroom lessons in a non-evaluative manner with your instructional coach so that you as the teacher can say, I'm working on whatever it is. My behavior management, can you take a look at this instructional coach and give me some feedback? I'm working on my delivery of whatever. And so they would work on that, videotape their lesson, watch it together and see how they can refine their practice. That is one thing that we have implemented and will be implementing. And also the cycle coaching with the teachers as well. They'll be using that next year so that they learn how to, again, refine their tools in their classroom and learn from one another. We have teachers who get subs for so they can go and observe in other people's classrooms so that they can see best practices.
I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. Have you identified your weaknesses so that all your stakeholders know what the weaknesses are and all of you are working towards it? You're talking about general delivery skills, instruction, and so forth. I'm talking about prescriptive teaching. That's the difference with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're asking would get to the evaluations. I mean, Dr. McNulty talked earlier about how we're doing robust evaluations for all staff, and that is down to the individual, in what they're
You're talking about specification. I'm talking about.
No, I'm talking about in general. I'm talking about in general. So evaluations are key because, you can't just say all of us need this without the individual data. So the principals have gotten robust training on evaluations to be able to go into classrooms, say, you do this well, but this part you don't, and they get that feedback on the regular. We also have PD programs. One is called model teaching, where just like if a kid can't add and a different kid can't multiply, you give them two different supports. Model teaching is similar to that, where we assign individual models to teachers and they can do on their own. So they have down to the skill level, they have the instructional coaches, and that evaluative feedback is, I think, exactly what you're talking about.
And I think that another thing to note is, the professional learning communities that have started the data meetings that are happening on a regular basis at the school are fairly, new as far as maybe being re-implemented at the school. And so that has been a weakness, if you want to use that term, for us to be able to work with the teachers on looking at the data in real time and then regrouping those students or reteaching where necessary.
Looking at instructional delivery.
Right.
I'm going to move on. I could continue with the discussion that I'm going to move on. I'd like to move on to the referendum ambassadors. This is a personal concern because my credibility is out there. I feel that I played a significant role in getting that referendum passed. Very visible and very vocal. Used my Facebook page, went to meetings, did everything to get that referendum passed. My understanding, I talked to some of the other people who were actively involved with the passage of that referendum, the team to push for that. My understanding was we requested a small group of people whom you would keep informed as you were going to use money, not post or pre, that we take it out to the community to be of source of communication between the school operation and the community, because there was a lack of trust. People felt that MGTA outside entity was going to misuse this money. Why would we get more money to the wolves? Okay, that was supposed to be a team of people to do that. One of the ways to make sure nothing is done is open it up and have 40, 50 people doing something. They see the meeting as you just come in and inform them something, but they're not able to really discuss it with you and focus on the referendum, not all those other dollars. Yes, I know they overlap. They want to know about those dollars that came from the tax, additional tax that's placed upon them in that community. So all I'm asking you is, based on what I said to the community, based on what I think the majority of our committee said to the community, that you refocus the referendum ambassadors. Your number is too large, and all they see it is a dog and pony show.
So we have broke that committee into subcommittees, and I think that it's working very well, and they have picked their groups of interest, and so they have given us much feedback, and we've been able to implement, I'd say 80% of their feedback, but
It's not about that. You're supposed to be, according to what I understood, and you can correct me, because it won't be the first time off course. But we felt that you were going to bounce off of us what you're going to do, just how the money's going to spend. Not all the other thing. I understand the last meeting, which I couldn't stand because it was a session, that you took them through some training. Okay? They're not interested in all that. All they're interested in is how you're going to spend the money and let the community know how to spend the money.
actually, they asked us to do the training, the committee asked us to do the training because they were confused about the different buckets of money, so.
But
we
you're
only
mixing it
spent-
about it. You shouldn't be mixing. That was a referendum ambassadors.
No, we're not mixing it.
I'm not saying you use them, merging those in your operation. I'm not saying that.
Mhm.
I'm saying the focus was on the referendum.
And the meeting was, the focus was, but we
Okay,
probably
but
spent the
then
first
you bring
15
in
minutes.
answer and bring it in all of the
We probably spent the first 15 minutes explaining the different buckets of money, and then we moved on from that conversation and specifically then only discussed the referendum dollars from that point forward. But we needed to give them some historical perspective because they asked for it.
I'd like to move on to page 9. Page 9, once again, we have a curriculum report, and this is not a curriculum report. We might want to call it an academic report because you're getting into curriculum instruction, assessment, and evaluation, all different process. And so you might want to look at that. What part of the Gary Community School Corporation curriculum is there, since you got the term curriculum, even though it's not a curriculum report? What part of the Gary Community School Corporation curriculum is in place other than the state standards?
So the state standards drive the curriculum that we utilize, but we do use Pearson for for math, and we use McGraw-Hill for reading. So those are the curricular tools, but the curriculum are the state standards.
Okay, so basically.
So what you teach are the standards.
Yeah, because never should a textbook become your curriculum.
So what you teach are the standards.
Okay, so what we have here is basically the standards. What are you doing to make sure that teachers understand the standards? So they can't teach them because there's an intended curriculum, there's a taught curriculum, and there's there's an intended curriculum, there's a C curriculum, and a taught curriculum. What are you doing to bring all those together? Okay, because if they don't see the questions, the standards, how are they going to teach them? And most teachers are not going to tell you what they don't know.
So those are some of the discussions around the POCs. So the teachers get together in grade level groups. They look at the standards that will be taught that week and what the standard says, what the students need to know, how they will instruct the students to get to that end. They sit with the instructional coach and the principals, and they have discussions around those standards and what the tools will be. So it's not just what, but also how. And those discussions happen.
And it's not individual, doing it grade level.
In a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that it's a mandate, but a request. I'd like to see one of those in action. And then I'd like to move on page.
Representative, I just want to make sure we keep moving on.
I understand, but you saved all this up. I was ready to go in January when I got appointed. That was the first case.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
You let it pile up. I was being bruised a moment ago, but I was checking to the secretary of the dean and also to the dean.
All I would ask is that you.
Okay, I got it.
Expedite as much as possible.
Because it's evident that I'm not gonna get back for my individual conferences. Okay, that's gone. You give me this much data. You give me this much information.
We are going to continue and touch on other topics.
But we're wasting time now. I plan to answer these questions. On page 10. Page 10, you're talking about, you're looking at the policies, and I imagine the school corporation has part of these policies. But you're bringing in an outside group to do that. Is that correct?
It's a company called Neola, and what they do is they provide the policy that's generally used for all school districts, then you take it and you have to individualize it for your own school district.
Okay, what are you thinking about involving the community or the faculty or staff, for their input of what policies are value and which ones are not, rather than have an outside entity make the decision? I mean, after they do the sifting, are you gonna sift it through the community?
Probably not, because these are law kind of abiding policies that aren't, like a vote, they're more.
Okay, but if they're law, okay, so they're not school city policies.
They're policies as far as like HR, you know.
Materiality.
Yeah.
There's a lot of purchasing policies.
So what is Neola supposed to be doing then?
So
I mean,
they,
if they're all laws, they can't say which ones are.
so they have to give us the guidelines, the policy,
They're
right?
trying to help you understand, use them better.
They give you the guidelines, so you don't have to write all of the policies. They'll say, here's the template, here's the policy for you to look at that's used at 99% of the schools.
Okay, so this is not existing policy, this is laws that you're trying to
Make into
better
policies.
understand. Okay, thank you. And then, okay, that's the end of my questions. Director.
Thank you, Representative. I'm going to say that we should take a short break. Let's call it 5 minutes if we can. We can go to 10 if we have to, but give everyone an opportunity to stretch their legs, hit the bathroom, and then we'll come back and get into the remainder of the agenda. Just. All right. Well, hopefully everyone feels a little fresh, got our legs stretched. We'll head into the second half here. We do have a long agenda, a number of big items, important items to cover today. Our next first topic is an update on the viable deficit reduction plan. Eric, I think you were presenting that for us?
That is correct.
All right, we'll take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Gadd. Everyone, Eric Harris with NBC, and thanks for the opportunity to be here as always. And, Peter, are you running slides? I'll just give you a little signal here.
Yeah.
Little head nod.
Sure.
That's fine, you're pulling that up.
Now,
Today is the 8th report to DUAB and the Gary community on the viable deficit reduction plan. So the 8th time I'm here presenting the update on the VDRP. And while this is the 8th report, today's report is very different. In that, today we are proud, we are pleased, and even celebratory, to the extent fiscal people can be celebratory. This is my celebratory face.
Shake your ass.
Yes. To announce that at the end of 2021, the Gary Community School Corporation has achieved a financial surplus. Yay. Absolutely. Achieving a financial surplus is a milestone that many thought would not happen. However, through almost 5 years of leadership with clear focus, determination, and hard decisions, combined with stakeholder and community support, GCSE is now positioned for the next phase of its turnaround. Before reviewing the final deficit reduction plan, update number 8, a brief look back is important to level set where GCSE was financially and to help fully appreciate where GCSE is now financially. GCSE's financial hardship goes back many years. For more than a decade, the district was running annual deficits, and by definition, the deficit is simply revenue and expenditures. So spending more than it's bringing in the tens and some years in the 20s of millions of dollars. The district was barely staying afloat through millions of dollars in loans and millions of dollars of unpaid bills. 2 referendums were voted down by the community. When an MGT began in August of 2017, enrollment was in decline, averaging a loss of 700 students per year for the 10 years prior. The annual debt was over $104 million, and the annual deficit in 2017 was $22 million. As we will see on the slide in front of us and in the Bible deficit reduction plan update number 8, a graphic that shows where we took over in mid-year of 2017. It was August, and we reported through the halfway mark in June. A deficit of $22 million systematically has come down each reporting time frame until December of 21 with a surplus of $2 million. In your packet is the BDRP, the Viable Deficit Reduction Plan. We use that acronym, and I think tongue in cheek, with some seriousness, there will be some point we can rename that from the Deficit Reduction Plan to the Surplus Liability. People do that going forward. Included from each of the board members, can work with it, we can. In your packet is the executive summary. In your individual communication is the entire report. The update number 8 is 100 pages roughly, so we didn't include that in the packet. The entire BDRP, all of them together, over 800 pages. Be happy to provide that again if anybody wants. In the packet again is just the executive summary, and that makes the same format, same methodology that we've followed for all 8 of our updates. Just touch briefly on a little bit of that, and as always, as we've done in the past, answer any questions you may have, either on the executive summary or in the detailed section, which isn't included, but happy to go through that and whatever level you want to today. But again, I wanted to reiterate before we go on that as of December of 2021, for the first time in a decade, Gary Community Schools is now at a surplus. In your executive summary, we have those same graphs. The deficit has reduced from $20 million to a surplus of $2 million in December. The annual debt, which we're showing here, we break that into 2 components. Debt is made up of long-term debt and short-term debt. In reverse order, short-term debt is essentially accounts payable at this point. The accounts payable has a normal monthly cycle, your normal cycle of bills and invoices. We're down to about $500,000 a month. That is the normal fiscal cycle for the school corporation. Back in 2017, $16.5 million. $8.5 million was owed to the IRS for taxes that were withheld and not paid, penalties and interest. And $8 million was due to virtually every vendor in Northwest Indiana and then some outside the region. We had approximately 20 judgments and settlements that were pending or in place against the corporation for lack of payment, and 20 more on the horizon. All of those have been paid down, and we are current with every vendor except for one. There is still a dispute with that dates back more than a decade at this point. We're not going to settle until we have all the documentation to support the reason to settle. That's why there's one that's outstanding. The top lines, there's 2, they converge, so they form one. That's the long-term debt. You can see in 2017 where we hit the high water mark of about $104 million. As you can see, it's percent and it's combined into that one singular line. One thing I want to point out here is you'll start to see a lower or slower decline in the long-term debt. It starts to level off as we get into 2020, June 21, December 21. That is intentional. It's a good thing because what we've done is reallocate, redirect the payments for some, not all, some common school loans into the school improvement fund. Gary Community Schools is essentially paying for the school improvement fund by diverting the repayments for common school loans. So while Gary Schools is still making those payments every month and filling that school improvement fund, what it does is put a pause on the repayment of those common school loans. It doesn't delete them, they're still in place. We just extended the lifeline. We're not adding any cost to it. We just put a pause on repayment while we build the school improvement fund. When the school improvement fund runs its course, we'll begin to pay back those loans again, the same payments, and we'll see the trajectory continues at that faster pace. That's the plan. Overall, from 104, we're down to about $71 million in long-term debt, $500 million in short-term debt. As we go through the deficit plan, 31 initiatives, 28 in place, 3 in current. Some have taken root sooner, some have taken hold later. It's a combination of revenue enhancements, cost reductions, or a combination of both, with some initiatives having an investment that requires some money on our part to kickstart that investment, either result in a reduction in cost or an increase in revenue, or a combination of both. The last thing I want to add before I answer any questions is that in January of 2018, when the first deficit reduction plan was presented, we projected a dollar amount of benefit. That's a combination of revenue enhancement, cost savings, or investments, or a combination of all of those. And then we calculated where that initial calculation was to where we are every moment in time on this 8 updates. Through December of 21, so with our eight update, we're just under $10 million off of our initial projection. But our initial projection was about $150 million. So on a percentage basis, we're off about 6%. So all along, we've been tracking, we continue to track. I think that's well within the margin of acceptability. And improved is, again, I'll end. Don't ever bury the lead. I'll end before I started that for the first time, Gary Community Schools is now in a surplus and on the trajectory for fiscal sustainability. Mr. Chairman.
Well, I can't talk, you've done all the work. But I do want to take a moment to recognize the monumental achievement that this represents. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, of course, this is not the purpose of a school. This is not the purpose for which you are there day after day. That is obviously about educating children and about improving academic outcomes, life outcomes for the students in the Gary community. But at the same time, it's hard to do those things without having a solid, stable foundation on which to build. And this represents really the first step towards that stable foundation. And I think we should all be proud of that accomplishment. I think there's a number of people who played a role in that. A lot of credit goes to you guys for the day-to-day efforts in moving the district towards this point financially. A lot of credit to the rest of us who've gotten to play a role and who have helped you along the way. But also, I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that the Gary community and the voters who voted to support this district and increase their own taxes to provide greater financial support to the district, that can't go unnoticed and shouldn't go unnoticed because it's an important factor in being able to not only close the gap on the deficit, you guys got us along a lot of the way there, but this obviously helps propel us forward as we move into the future, and I think is going to give you additional resources to continue to invest in what matters most in the academic and educational outcomes to children. And that's really important. I think the other point that's really important to note is that when we set out on this task in 2017, and Representative Thompson and Representative Smith and Senator Brown were all part of those conversations at that time, I don't know that anyone thought we could accomplish financial solvency at that point. The picture was grim and the picture was daunting, and it was unclear what that path forward was going to look like. And I think it was uncertain of whether it could be accomplished, and if so, how fast it could be accomplished. And it's a tremendous achievement to have gotten there at all, but and to have gotten there in as fast as we have, is all the better. And so thank you for your work in this district. Thank you for doing that. It's really a tremendous achievement that we've done that without having to make very drastic cuts along the way in educational services. And, we've actually been able to do the opposite. We had to make some very difficult decisions at the beginning. But really, in the last few years, we've been able to invest in the school. We've been able to invest, we'll see later, more than $50 million in the facilities of the district, which desperately needed work, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to make those investments. We've made an investment in teachers, raising their compensation for the first time in a decade, and additional stipends on top of that. We've been able to make additional improvements and investments in the educational programming at the district. And so I think being able to have done all those things at the same time that we were facing a daunting fiscal deficit is really just an amazing accomplishment, and one that we should all be pleased with and proud of. And then we have to move on and keep going, because we have to keep educating the children. So, and that is the primary function. And I look forward to the fact that this is going to enable us, enable you and you and you and everybody in this room who spends their day-to-day activity, their day jobs in Gary Community Schools, focused on the real mission of the school and less focused on just keeping us afloat. So thank you.
Chairman, may I join you in complimenting MTT getting this task done? I go on record saying I'm pleased with what they've been able to do fiscally with the school corporation. When we look at the first generation of effective schools we serve, there's nothing about money. Say money makes schools effective. Second generation of effective schools we serve said nothing about money. They added 2 quarters, but they didn't say anything about money. But you can't do the rest, you can't do the rest without money. Okay? You got to say almost every area you got there's some dollar on stuff that's in there. Even when we start out climbing in culture, it gives a physical aspect to that. It takes money to keep the physical plant up, to make improvements and to keep it clean and deal with the grounds and everything. Money is part of it. So I do feel that it's laudable that you've been able to do that. Am I concerned about other things? Yes. Am I concerned about the way sometimes you spend your money? Yes. But you've done what was the genesis of 1315, if you agree, and that is to eliminate the debt. And I want to begin. I do have questions to ask. Eric will get to the point.
Yes.
But I want to talk to you and all the
Comments or observations?
Well done. Good job. So stuck to the plan, stuck to it.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Further questions? Representative Smith, you mentioned you had some.
I do. I want to ask first of all, what is the status of the art collection that's supposedly something possible in Chicago?
Yes, just that the art collection, let me back up. If we weren't having this conversation today about a surplus, the conversation about the art collection would be very different. That was one of the lines that we would have crossed as the corporation was in beyond distress and in its very last throes of survivability was to liquidate the art. Because of where we are today, the art is in a conservatory for when the time comes when it can be brought back into the community safely and effectively. And that will be a celebratory moment. But it is safe and secure.
Okay, I'm sure you had this in your report, while just asking one mine, and I probably missed it. Of the $71 million, debt that we have, how much of that is owed to the common school?
Don't have that in memory, approximately half.
Half.
Because it's slowed down, at one point it's exactly half, it may be a little more than half, because we have been making payments back to the common school loan fund, as we redirected that into the school improvement fund, but in very round numbers, about half.
So you are, and that probably answers my next question, you are with excesses in off the common school fund?
Yes, yes, no, it's on pause, no. Let me say this, I mean, don't want to mislead anybody. There's a number of school loans that were taken out over time. Not every one of those loans is on pause. A couple of those loans are still being repaid right now. For the majority of the common school loans are not being repaid at the moment. Those payments are being directed to school improvement.
Okay, so I guess my question is applicable, and that is, with the referendum dollars, and I have special dollars as well, if we have surpluses from school improvement fund, is there any plan to pay those off? Because I'm looking at longevity for the school corporation. So once the local community takes it over, it doesn't have such a great burden.
Yeah. Yeah, and I totally understand your question. So, the school improvement fund kid revenue, the money being redirected in the school improvement fund can only be used for very distinct purposes.
Right.
Repairs and demolition. So it can't be used for anything else. Once that goes through 24 or 25. Once that ends, then there'll be a re-acceleration of repayment of common school loans. We're on track to have those common school loans for 2030, around 2030, fully paid off. And so, yeah, the debt load.
My point is, I understand that those SIF dollars are restricted, I understand that. But you have these other sums with the referendum now in place, and these extra dollars in place. There should be some savings there. I don't know if there will be, I had some difficulty following all of this stuff. I am not an accountant, but I'm wondering, with there being certain dollars that have more latitude or freedom, if those dollars can be used and we can liquidate more of the common school debt.
So essentially though, the common school loans are being part of the debt service levy. So that is included in that levy amount for property taxes. So essentially whether the debt exists or not is solely dependent on the amount of levy you're going to receive. So even though those funds are being transferred into the 1065, which actually they flow through education because they're being withheld with our basic grant tuition. That flow of funds all goes through the debt service. So I'm not sure that you would see any sort of savings per se, because that's being included in the levy that's being taken out for that bracket. That makes sense.
For this, we've only had one collection year, right, for
the referendum.
And how does that compare? What's that dollar amount compared to the amount of money that we got through the legislation that allowed us to use the common school fund payments?
So we received about $9 million in our referendum last year. That was what was collected, which was about 75% of the total levy.
So was the figure projected higher than that?
The original budget was 8.9, and we did receive a little bit more than what was originally budgeted for, just because the collection rate was higher than anticipated. if you remember, in January 1, we did take out a tax anticipation warrant for about $4.5 million.
Commonly, yeah, every year, that's
Right, so we did that to pay for the teacher increases that started January 1. So really that first disbursement and part of the second disbursement we received in December essentially paid back that tax anticipation warrant and left us with about $3 million after some expenditures that will have to carry us until June of this year to our next disbursement.
Well, let me just indicate the community really feels that because of this abundance of dollars, that some decisions are being made by MTT after using these dollars and almost becomes a slush fund. And so they are very concerned about the future. There's a feeling out there that the dollars may not be managed as prudently as they ought to be. To make sure that we have stability, not once the local community takes over, we want to be able to fly for about 5 years before we have decided to really worry about any deficits or anything. That's not money that works to make the transition and to draw back students in, because that's going to be our only answer to survival, is to get, because all the top money are not going to be there for us, you know. We need to do some things to get students to return to their school programs.
That's definitely understandable, and I agree. I think the safety in that is that the referendum funds can only be used for the ballot question. Just like 1065 and other funds that we have, they are restricted for certain more uses, and so based on those committees.
Well, we can put money on one side, go to another side on without the restrictive component with the school program. I mean, I understand even with
Not
the
exactly. You can make a transfer of the referendum fund to help assist in balancing the budget, which was part of the tax question.
So to, respond to Nicole here, you mentioned ESSER a few times, and ESSER has even more strings than the school improvement fund does, and so.
But there's all of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the plan is in front of you where we've taken advantage of the ESSER dollars to maximize the school improvement fund dollars and vice versa. But nowhere in those dollars are we talking about, like with the ESSER funds, being able to pay down old debt.
So I understand that, but we don't have to use some of that money that we have there, that came through that fund, that we can give back to pay for the council. But I'm not saying that you have the latitude of just doing whatever you want to do in community funds. But within the guidelines, my question is, are you thinking about trying to retire more of that debt?
So we have thought through the guidelines very well to make sure that we're using them for the intended purpose. And as you'll see as we get to later with the ESSER plan and then, the school improvement fund update, you will see those uses of dollars there.
And my next question is, I saw in your research page.
Representative, I think you can say, apologize, I'm being a contrarian here as far as just using what is now called a surplus to pay down debt, but while there's still academic issues going on in school corporations, I think surplus should go to try to solve the academic issues accurately in schools before we worry about paying down the debt that's going to the school, because we've been talking for a long time, the academic has been down. I don't think I can come to any of these meetings, I've been coming to it for 5 years, that says Gary Community Schools is on a high academic level. All thing I hear is we're on a low academic level. We need to increase those scores. We need to increase the education at that level. And you're not going to do that if we take that money that could be spent on education and send it to just pay off debt. I think
you're on the same wavelength, but I run my head around this solid problem.
No, I think it's
it has to be a constructive plan, and as I said, not sort of affect schools that you got to have money to do it.
Right.
Okay. You're not going to do it without money.
I agree.
But I am saying that at this point, the community feels like there might be some surplus. I'm expressing what the community is saying is that they want the money used very wisely, strategically, so that we have some money to make sure that we get control. Not just I want people to disappear, play Casper and just disappear out of there. Okay. Not that I don't expect people that I'm working with. I've got to know some people that that I really admire and have respect for. But I want, and the community wants to be local control.
But that can't be the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal has to be the kids are educated correctly.
And that should have been the goal when MG took over. But they lost it. Our schools were better before you took this academic thing where we are now. And I know that's the case because we had some A schools, we had some B schools, we had some C schools, we had some D schools, now we have the F schools. And we would probably have that perpetuated, where it is perpetuated, because whatever score you got last time is what you got now. With the legislation in passed, that we're not looking at academic performance in grade schools, so you keep the grades you had before, so you all have. And so, you preach to the choir when you tell me that I'm concerned about academics. I am one who wants to raise that issue. I'm not saying you didn't. I raised the issue about academics on here every time I've been on here.
I just like to see the surplus be focused toward the academics and toward grading plans.
But if you just don't, if you bring in programs and don't bring programs and not be able to swift, I will assure you, you're never going to get what you want.
Representative, I agree with your point. We need to be mindful, and I think it's this board's job to be very diligent and deliberate in overseeing the use of funds at the district. And I welcome any opportunities to do that, and we're doing some of that today, and we will continue to scrutinize the spending there and appreciate you continuing to push that point, because it's an important one, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. That just because things are going well, we can't become complacent without understanding. Thank you.
If I may go on.
Yes, please.
I just want to make a compliment on page 3, where you indicate that about that our debt has been lowered. And then when you get to page 10, it talks about required investment. Can you give us examples of what required investment are?
Sure. If we were doing an energy initiative that over the long term would save on utility bills, it would require an investment in lighting or windows or something.
Because it's not band-aids, it's just what is needed.
Right. Does it make sense to spend $1 to save $3?
On page 13, what do the 2 columns that have the dollar amounts mean? What on the left? What does it mean? What does it mean on the right side?
Yep. On the left is a moment in time in any given year. So the deficit started out in 2017 at $22 million. So that's the scale. It goes up to a surplus of $40 million, which obviously is a long ways away. But you can see the zero line in the middle on the left-hand side. We're just over that at the beginning of 21. On the right-hand side is the cumulative benefit of all the initiatives taken together. The potential revenue generated, cost savings, net investments. From the very first vital debt reduction plan, about $151 million of potential net benefit. So that's the scale from 0 to 160. And then where we are is in 21 is about 141.
And on page 15, you're talking about the initiatives, and you got complete custodian services. Can you explain to me what kind of initiative that is?
Yeah, we're missing an L, so it's should say complete, not complete. No, you're right. Complete custodian service. The next one is should be complete, not the L. Right. So one of the initiatives that we undertook was right sizing the entire district's labor force relative to the size of enrollment and the number of buildings that were occupied at a moment in time. When we started in 2017, it was quite clear we had a lot more labor than was actually needed. And so we competed with the custodian contract at that time, and that's generated significant savings, compounded.
And then you reduce the cost of employees' health insurance. What's the status of that?
Yeah, that was one of those payments that had been not made for a number of years. And we were being, like, probably say, held hostage by the health insurance company at the time in the rates that we were given. Once we paid down that debt and got back to zero, we were able to negotiate a better health plan. Not only better rates, but better service.
And then on page 16, pay for success, is that the benefit, that is the levels of bonus success? I mean, what is that?
No, that's a great question. That is an initiative that we have not undertaken. Sometimes that's called a social impact bond. That's a unique service where the state would make an investment for a long-term benefit that would have a return on investment over a long period of time. And that's not something that we've undertaken yet.
Thank you. I'll stop.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Are there any questions on the BDRP?
Good question, Chairman. And most of that is 71, 72 million. Most on fixed rate, and I'm interested about half of it's going back to schools. Of that that's out there in the secondary market, I'm going to say secondary market. Is any of it still variable rate?
Yeah. Yeah, but you'll see later today. We have 3 series ones. We come to each 3 times. We refinance 3 times for each series once. There's another bite of the apple that we might bring forward in short. More later.
Great. All right, let's move to the academic plan.
Okay. Sorry, so. Okay, we're really excited to be talking about the academic action plan today. We've talked a lot about other things, but as we've all agreed, we need to continue our efforts on the academic action plan. So we've been working diligently on doing that. This is going to be a continuous improvement conversation. This is a plan. This is something that we will adjust as needed. And just to be reminding ourselves that this work takes time. And we feel like we've come a long way in a short period of time. We've been working hard over the last several years on building the foundation that's needed for this plan, such as putting things in place, such for the curriculum that was needed that hadn't been updated for many years, getting staffing in place, the professional development that we've talked about, the technology that was needed in the school, adjusting scheduling for both staff and students, getting contracts in place, the policies that we talked about, et cetera. Again, all those things needed to be in place for sustainability as we move forward. So we're really excited that because of all those things that we are now seeing academic growth this year in our scores. And I think this is important so that when we get to the end, and the end is in sight, that there is a solid foundation in place. And I also want to be mindful for all of us that when you look at state takeovers across the nation, they typically go 10, 15, 20 years. And we're in year 5, and we've made, we feel like, significant progress in many arenas. And this is the next one that we are making improvements on. So with that, let me turn it over to Ms. Gretchen.
Okay, thank you. So you have the full plan in your packet and our slides here to show some of the key focus areas. We've had some discussion around how finances and academics work together, and they are indeed relational. So we understand that without financial stability, without some sound choices in the district, there are some things that cannot happen on the academic arena. So you need to be able to retain and keep teachers. You need to be able to train those teachers. You need to be able to purchase curricula that will help, even though the state standards are the curriculum, you still need those support materials. And without those, you're not going to get to the level that we want our students to be. We talked about having vendors that, didn't want to work with the district. And, that occurred even when I came on just a couple years ago, where, we have folks not wanting to work with us because of some of the financial issues that they had in the past. So there's definitely a relation between academic progress and financial stability. And, that being said, we are seeing that progress start to occur at this point. And so now that our finances are in a better state, we're seeing that those improvements. You could put this fast. And so this plan that was created was based on, I think Dr. Smith discussed it earlier, the effective schools research by the result. And the second correlates that he looked at did not have finances there. However, we understand that they make a difference. So that there must be a clear focused mission, a safe and orderly environment, climate of high expectations, opportunities to learn, monitoring of student progress, positive homeschool relations, and of course, sound instructional leadership. And so before this plan, or as we were creating this plan, we received feedback from several sources. Folks at the Indiana Department of Ed, we had folks at IUN and the Department of Education, and several staff members, and in its early iteration, there were discussions with Dr. Smith as well. So we are already, like I said, beginning to see the benefits of utilizing best practices in our data. And so what you see here is a chart that shows iReady from fall to winter. The first two columns show the number of students on or above grade level at the beginning, and then at the fall, winter assessment. And that shows an increase of 10%. So 10% more of our students are now at or above grade level in reading. The second two columns show one level below grade level, and that is, you do see a small uptick there, but generally these numbers are moving in a direction that you want them to move. And then that last two columns show 2 or more levels below, and as you see that decrease, that shows that we have fewer students 2 or more levels below, and we are very excited about those numbers. These are the reading scores progress, and if you're advanced ones, we will look at the math. Again, we see an increase of 7% of the students on or above, grade level from the fall to the winter. One level below went up some, and 2 or more levels went down 16%. So we're seeing very fewer of our students now in the 2 or more levels, grade levels below, and they are moving in the right trajectory. Now, are we saying that this is the end and we're done and no, there's still more work to be done. And we believe that the things that we put into place, looking at how the Indiana Department of Ed has pillars that they have put out, I think at our last meeting, they discussed those ones that we needed to look at. We had already put those into place. And they were extending the school day, differentiating the instruction, having additional support staff, and making certain that engagement is happening in the classrooms. And we've done those things. In addition to that, we're looking at project-based learning. We are looking at a focus on early literacy and STEM instruction. And so we'll continue to utilize all of the best practices around instruction and curriculum. We will continue to have communications with our staffs, with our parents, with our community stakeholders, and we know that the trajectory is going in the right direction. Our students, they have to grow in order to be proficient, and they are growing, as you can see here. And then finally, if you advance. So we have some goals for our next school year and toward the end, spring 2023. And so our goal is that 80% of our K through 8th grade students will meet their individual growth targets in reading, and that 70% will meet their individual growth targets in math. Now, meeting your individual growth target means that you are growing, but we'll also look at stretch goals. And stretch goals allow us to have students be at proficiency, which is where we ultimately want to be. And then the other data points there are goal statements. There are 9th through 12th grade students, and that they will score 75% of them will grow in reading and 70 in math based on the common informative assessments that are being created currently. Are there any questions?
And I think that in your packet, there's a, obviously the lengthy, more explanation and the action items and steps that we'll be taking for each one of those goals, so that we'll be able to report those out every month when we come forward with this board on the progress we're making.
There's also a rebranding document that we are looking at explicitly stating what is expected for administrators, teachers, students, parents, support staff, so that everybody understands kind of the direction that we're going. It might look a little bit different, but it's all around best practices and instructional strategies that are meant to help students.
I want to pause for a moment. I want to go back to the two slides. Pete, if you can go back to the This is a really important accomplishment in the district, and I really don't want this to slide by unnoticed by everyone here today. Because what we really see is a significant shift of students moving from being way behind to a little behind and ahead. And while I don't think anyone would stand here today and say, oh, mission accomplished, we are where we want to be and we should be satisfied with these results. I think of it back like we were looking at with the BDRP and the growth of the elimination of the deficit. It was shrinking over time. This is one data point. It's not enough to say we have a line yet, but we're seeing a move in the right direction. And I think it's really important. I mean, when you look at the numbers, and I'm looking at the packet where you have the actual percentages, you doubled the number of kids who were on or above grade level in reading district-wide. There were 10% of kids in the Gary Community Schools in the fall who were measuring at or above grade level. Now you have 20%. That's a tremendous accomplishment. I'm excited to see that play out, hopefully in the summative assessments here as those kids take the iLearn and the iRead exams. And in math, it's even more striking. You had 2% of kids in the fall who were at or above grade level. And obviously, we're looking at this in the context of the post-COVID world, right? We know learning loss occurred. We've lost a lot of ground from remote learning and the disruption that occurred there. But now in the winter, you're showing 9% of kids, and that's certainly not where we want to be. We can't be satisfied with that number. But from 2% to 9%, I mean, that's more than a fourfold increase in the percentage of kids who are able to meet the expectations for their grade level. I mean, that's tremendous, and I'm excited to see these two graphs grow in the future as we add more bars and we continue to see the shift from the one side to the other. And so, thank you for your efforts there. I'm optimistic about what I see.
And then again, it's in partnership with teachers. The teachers have done a great job. Our parents, community members, lots of people coming in and reading to our kids. We've given out thousands of books for kids to take home and read with their families. I've mentioned here before, our parents graduating with their kids now too. So it's all those things working in collaboration that's making this happen. So.
Yeah, well, it's a testament to the foundation we're building. And I think, as you said at the outset, this is a slow product. Finances are a lot easier to move than academics and educational outcomes. And I think we would all like to see them move faster. And maybe there are things we could have done along the way to move them faster. But at the same time, this is an important milestone in that journey of progress towards a better future and better outcomes. So thank you.
I do, I'm glad to see that there's been growth but the state will look at mastery. And that's a different concept than growth. Growth is an important part of mastery, of course. I don't know if that's a completion of the report. I got to every page of the report, and I'd like to deal with it. Okay. My first question would be to you, Mr. Chair, and that is, how does this information that they just shared with us compare with the benchmark so far of that contract? Does that mean that they met a benchmark in academics, or they have them in community engagement, communication, and they have benchmarks for academic performance? Where does that put us as far as what was in that contract? And I didn't negotiate the contract, you did. What did? Where are they with that benchmark?
I haven't done that analysis to see how this compares. You know, I don't think it's any secret. We didn't make the benchmark last year. Across the board of academics, that was disappointing. But, you know, trajectory is important, and, you know, I'll be looking forward to seeing how this.
That's a good sign. I would like to go to page 5 of the academic report. And I'm a little bit concerned that this completion properly. It said fall 2016, the school board and the superintendent were warning the school district will be dissolved. The school voters did not approve a referendum. I was on that committee. I remember us ever talking about the school board question. How was this assessment with the state in here?
So I'll answer if the plan that you have, I realize that yours is paper, but there's a hyperlink to a Chicago Tribune article in there that is speaking to that very thing. So.
Are you saying the committee was saying that, or you saying the media?
It says that the school board and superintendent were warning the district would be dissolved if Gary voters did not approve a referendum, and that the referendum failed. This occurred in a public meeting, but there is an article linked to that. Link. There was a forum explaining.
Okay. Well, I agree that. I know that as a committee member, I never advocated that. Okay.
Just to be clear, that was in 2016.
I understand. Let's move down to winter of 2019. The blatant sheet, was this under MGT leadership?
No,
In 2019? You were 2019, you were in charge.
Yes, the results manifested in 2018 and 19. The incidents took place prior to 2017.
It's prior to your date, no. That's right. Okay. And the next to last paragraph on this page, it says that Gary Municipal Corporation has not been operating in best services for years, but today the situation has changed. Students are learning in person. Okay, I think we're probably talking about COVID, post-COVID. But what about 2018 and 2019? Weren't they learning in person then? And the scores were low?
So yes, we were learning in person, but as we discussed before, without that stability of the academic, of the finances, those are relational situations, and there were some things that still were not quite right. We believe the laying the foundation at this point.
Okay, you mentioned in the next sentence, along the school day, what is being done differently in this long school day? Or is it the same versus the regular school day?
Yeah, so for example, at the high school level, you might have had 5 credit-bearing opportunities, and in order to graduate on time, you had about 100%, which is hard for any individual besides kids. So at the high school level, middle school level, we were able to add additional classes, and that offered enrichment for kids to take other types of classes, more electives, more opportunities. But it also gave the kids the opportunity to fail and have another chance, which, as we know as adults, everyone needs a second chance with certain things. So
it's a day remedial or just?
so there, it's both. So there's the opportunity for additional classes to retake ones that kids didn't do very well the first time, but it also gives them an opportunity to take other types of classes. At the elementary level, you are able to build in more enrichment. So we talked about STEM certification as an example. It's going to be one of the contracts that you'll see later in your packet. But we're able to do project-based learning at much higher levels because we have more time.
As well as some intervention time.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of remediation, I'm glad the system's using already, very well structured program, very meaningful program. When you purchased that, did you purchase all the components? Because teachers said to me that the toolkit or something, I got this email that said, tools for instructional available as a guide to remediate student teacher textboxes and additional resource that I already provide that supports students for instruction. However, the teacher textbox is not available to the teachers. Now, I know it is now because the teachers have gotten acting to them.
It's all
purchased.
Yeah, so when you purchase iReady, the toolkit comes with it. So it may have been whatever the information you had, the teacher or teachers were not privy to how to utilize it. And I'm not certain as to whether we use, we have several PDs.
The teachers came from one building, shared with me, and they indicated that they called down to the Department of Education or called a number that's associated with iReady. And that they were told that Gary did not buy that aspect.
We purchased everything.
At one time. If we can move to page 8. What you have fostered, what you have been able to achieve. And this is one area that we're constantly getting complaints about. Not only me, but all Black legislators from all of that to be Black from the affected area in Northwest Indiana. Communicating to stakeholders to the focus of growth for all students. Can you tell me how that's being done? And because this is an area that the community is complaining about, that they are not receiving this communication.
So we have parent meetings, there are newsletters, there have been test talks with students and that data shared with parents. I'm not surveys too, but the question was about individual student growth. And that student growth data is definitely shared with parents and available for parents at the ready.
Okay, under the monitoring section, you have things that's listed here that where you're initiating or starting a program, but it's not assessing or monitoring. Monitoring and assessing is something that you do with monitoring and correlate.
Can you point to it?
Okay, you say principals will communicate to teachers and families the importance of student growth. And just explain the program, how is that monitored? That's initiating and informing, but how is it monitored? How do you monitor a clear and focused mission?
So we do surveys regularly. So first of all, everyone needs to know what the mission and the vision is.
That's initiating.
Right. And once they know that, and then you monitor it by asking folks, do they know it? And whether or not they feel in the school or in the district that those things are.
But you're not saying that. You said the principal, the monitoring you have, the second one is monitoring. The first indicator that you have there is not monitoring. That's an initiating program. It's not monitoring. Monitoring is you're trying to find out before you evaluate whether or not you are making progress. That's monitoring. You're telling them what that is. That's initiating. So you may want to look at that. And then it says clearly communicating the school's vision. I think you're using the mission and that vision, as the same, and they have different meanings. You may want to look at that. I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying that this document is not correct. And what kind of evaluation you talk about, how are you going to evaluate? Is that what the bar is down at the bottom?
Yes, are you meaning the final or the
How
chart?
do you evaluate?
So that chart does show, what, who, when, and how, so these are just certain things. So we'll have a progress report, so there'll be notes from the meeting. So this talks about that rebranding meeting, that kind of gets to what are we all about? And I think we talked about it a little bit when we talked before.
Yeah, but how are you evaluating whether there's a clear and focused mission? How do you evaluate?
We are going to evaluate that in these discussions around what it is that our plan is and how that is come to fruition. That's what those meetings will be about.
Okay, I think that if this was a document that you're gonna share with the community as a plan, and you gotta follow all the stakeholders, so realize that. That this really does talk about how you want to evaluate or how you really want to monitor the second step. The principals going to walk through certain monitoring the mission, the task. But this, all it says that you're going to reveal the information through the website, which I'm telling you, your website is the best kept secret. You got to get other ways to get this information out to the parents than using that website. That's what it is. What was suggested to you, my suggestion first of all is that you actually evaluate the mission and some way of monitoring whether people know what the mission of the school is or what the vision of the school is. It's a simple thing by asking the stakeholders, just asking the question, what is the mission of our school? And then what's the mission of our school? I'm saying as far as doing that, that's an informal way of understanding and engaging with other people, know what it is. Not only the faculty, but the staff as well as the parents. Okay, and so you gather that that's monitoring. Evaluation is that you need some kind of survey that you're going to do, because when you start on evaluating, it's summative and it's more formal. And I don't see any formal aspect in this.
Definitely utilize surveys now that we're in this survey.
Reporting to us what you're doing. I'm just saying that this is deficient. Okay. Let me move on to the next section where we talk about high expectation. High expectation is not beliefs, it's behavior. Okay. Here you're talking about curriculum, maps, and ways that you want to help with instruction. But you're not talking about how you build into high expectation. It is a behavior. I don't see any monitoring of the behaviors of people, that the stakeholders. I don't see any strategies here that make you know that you have high expectations. For example, if high expectation begins with the administrator holding himself or herself responsible. Okay. What is it? Beliefs drive behavior. I don't want to take the Sunday school, but we made him to God the ground, just like it is the body, spirit, mind. So as your spirit leads your mind, and your mind leads your behavior. Okay. We call it affective domain, the psychical domain, and the cognitive domain. But the point is that the principal has to hold himself or herself accountable for high expectation. That I arrive on time, that I'm well prepared for faculty meetings, that I'm monitoring, I'm out into the school, I'm doing what I need to do. I have high expectation, holding myself with high expectation. The next is hold teachers, that they're going to have discipline, that they're going to arrive to school on time, that they're going to be fair and care about students. Those are kinds of things that do with high expectation. I expect you to do your best, high expectation. And then it moves on to the parents. I expect you to help the kids forward. I expect you to keep your child in control. Then I expect you to monitor their behavior. those are high expectations. That's important for the mind, because you act out about, I'm suggesting to you that you may want to do some more research on their desire on that, so you agree with this.
Representative said that.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that just.
I
I think many educators may just say this and they already got a plan.
Appreciate
Tell them that the plan is approved.
Appreciate it.
And I'm not saying it, not to criticize them, I'm saying it because I'm concerned about the children that I must live with, that I must take care of, that I must experience the results if education in our community is not doing it.
So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your feedback on the report. Mike, if I'd like to get to what questions you might have, and then maybe invite you to connect with the team more about the substance and how we can improve it.
Well, you know, they're going to sit on this one with high basic supplements and then it needs crab lines.
I think we can have a separate dialogue. I do want to go through any questions you might have and trying to be respectful. I don't want to run out of time today. We are running.
And talking about that, and I failed to do that with the government notes before. When we talk about, and we haven't gotten to, I guess, that portion, where we're talking about how we're going to spend the money, in this coming next hour.
Okay. Any other questions on the academic plan? Representative. Any other questions on the academic plan for the team? The one thing I'd ask on the slides is you gave us some future goals, expectations that we'd like to hit. It would be interesting to see sort of to track where we are today on those goals, to ascertain how our baseline, how far we have to go, and really monitor that. So
We did it all, and just, I think
Sure.
we're at about 53% of our students at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I also like seeing the goals mastered, not just growth,
but
but mastered.
Yeah.
What?
I think that
Because I will also for mastery. And it was across the state, but it was even more pronounced here.
it's a real struggle. If you could share that data with the board,
Yes.
following the meeting, that would be appreciated. When we move to the ESSER plan, this is been a long time in the works, and I know to remind the members of the board and the community where we've been on this particular issue. You recall that these are really 3 rounds of funding from the federal government during the course of the last couple of years related to the pandemic. It was the 3rd tranche of those funds that were the most flexible, and I think the largest amount of those funds, the bulk of the funds were in that 3rd tranche. Back in, I believe it was May, June timeframe, we had a conversation here, an initial conversation with the team, and they gave us a presentation around their path forward of how they wanted to spend those funds. They had, I think you had some initial needs. We know we need to do this, and the summer was upon us, and so we did authorize them to move forward on a small scale with a certain individual projects, most of those in the capital arena. And we have approved a number of contracts in that space over the last several months. But since that time, the team has continued to work on the plan in collaboration with others, and they'll detail that for us. And so this really is the culmination of that work and represents, sort of a first final plan, recognizing that these dollars are somewhat flexible and this plan may need to be adjusted over time. So this is something that we have asked them to provide and something that we believe is important. Normally, we don't ask them to report on all of their federal dollars because of the flexibility of these dollars, the amount of these dollars. We thought it was important to enhance the level of transparency that we normally give to and scrutiny that we give to this kind of funding. So with that, I'll turn it to the team to tell us about the plan that they put forward.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. So I'll start out with, there was a purpose of doing the academic action plan, which I want to thank you, Kim, for working on. It wasn't some consultant that made it, that it was you, and I thought you did a very nice job. But that academic action plan drove the use of the ESSER dollars. And that is what we're going to talk about now. So anytime you have money, you obviously want need and data and rationale to drive why the dollars are being used. And so that's why we started with the academic plan. The ESSER funding is from the federal government, passed down to Indiana, then passed down to school districts. And so the primary purpose was to safely reopen. And so there are allowabilities in the funding regarding safely reopening and responding to the coronavirus pandemic. So a lot of the things that you've heard about, that you've seen that we've used the money on, to make sure that our schools were safe to reopen, to get our kids back in person where we believe that they're best educated, definitely was supported with this money. But to move beyond that, the dollars, as Chairman McAdams said, we had 3 different rounds, and they had flexibility for us to respond to the pandemic and be able to look at long-term sustainability. So, Pete, you're a little fast on your trigger. That's all right. That's okay. So I want to point out that we did solicit input in several different ways. We did not create this plan in a vacuum. We sought feedback from kids, from families, from staff, from community members. We worked with peer school districts. One of the reasons why this funding did come out, and we could have started using the full dollars right away, but to spend $40+ million with no plan and to do it immediately by the seat of your pants is not very smart. So we took 6 months to work with actually a partner that DUAB recommended that was a peer collaborative with other districts to really bounce ideas off of each other, because we had the very positives of VDRP from before. We don't want to start investing in activities that long-term are going to impact the fiscal sustainability of the district. So those dollars are why we're taking, or that plan is why it took us this amount of time to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row. Our 4 pillars of the plan are focusing on academics, engagement, physical pieces, and operations. And upon approval by this board, we will have that plan on our website. So the next slide, this is a visual really just to demonstrate where we are. Whenever we talk about federal dollars that are one-time funding stream, you have a cliff. And you have to prepare for that cliff. And so that highlighted portion at the top represents where we are, but there is a hard stop for these dollars. They're not old, they don't repeat year after year after year. It is a one-time funding stream. That September 2024 sounds like a long way away, but when you're trying to gather contractors, when you're trying to implement a new curriculum, and you don't want to hire staff that you then have to let go in September 2024, you have to plan for that. So all of this timing depends upon federal rules. It also depends upon our student enrollment, and so on with the lower pieces. That higher piece is what we're focusing on today. So the next slide. We definitely want to talk about community engagement here in several ways that we've gotten feedback so that you know how we've arrived at today. So we've done several community forums. Some of them that were advertised solely about ESSER. One of the worst ways to get people to come to something is to highlight it as a boring topic and hope that people show up. And so you advertise it as something else and bring them in. So we did have ESSER focus forums to make sure people knew that that's what we were talking about. But then other times we said, hey, let's talk about ESSER while we have you. And so we did several forums to get people in. We have focus groups. We had several meetings with our teachers and our principals. Some of the things that you have already approved, like for example, our record stipend increase for our teacher pay was talked about ad nauseam with our staff and our teachers, and made sure that they knew the flexibility of the funding and why we were using it in that way. So several of the things you've already approved. Community survey responses. We did a direct survey to the community about ESSER funds. What would you like to see us use it on? And then lastly, I want to be remiss to say there's several mentions in our academic plan of how we do survey, how we get evaluated data from our team. And so we take advantage of data we already have. So we've done 5 Essential survey for several years and had thousands of student responses. What would you like to see in a school? And use that data to help drive what we're using. The big talking point here is 80% of the ESSER 3 dollars, which is that third round, that we have are being used for academic related expenses. So I think that goes to your point earlier, Mr. Joyce, about this is a one-time silver lining, and we have to use it to invest in our kids and our teachers, and that's absolutely what we're doing.
Requirements of 20%.
Yeah, so the requirement was 20 and we overshot that by a lot. We're proud of that. This slide talks about in totality. So after one, much smaller pot of money, you're talking about $4.8 million. And that has pretty much been exhausted to date. Hand sanitizers, purifiers, other things like that help us reopen last year. ESSER 2 is 20.8 million, and you have approved some of those projects already, like the roofing project, the HVAC project. Those have come to you in piecemeal because, as you know, it takes some time to get those off the ground, and we put them ready for today. Primarily, we're talking about ESSER 3 though, 46.8. And you have the full detail in front of you in your packet, and we have some key uses next. If you look at all of the uses across all 3 funds, 55.79 is used for academics. So let's talk about some key uses on the next slide. We can look at individual activities here. So the first piece, super proud of, $7.3 million is reserved for the potential for teacher performance-related metrics. You all have already seen this year's collective bargaining agreement where we had metrics written into it that as long as we hit those certain benchmarks, then we were glad to provide the incentives for staff. We've had really good conversations about what does it take to get those benchmarks, because we know that academics need to increase while we're spending these dollars. Another piece, compensating staff to extend each school day, $5.2 million over the course of the plan. And that's one of the several raises that we've been able to give to our staff in one way or another. Next piece, we know we need intensive professional development tied to that academic plan with rigor of instruction and being able to teach in a small group and other pieces like that. So we needed money set aside for it. Curriculum is another example. Making sure we had a really robust summer school. Last year we did a longer summer school in the number of days and the length of the day that Gary had had in anyone's recent memory. So I think that plays into a lot of the positives that you saw in front of you with the data. Some more pieces that are part of the ESSER plan. Next slide, Pete. One of the benefits of the dollars is we definitely can use it in flexible ways, but there are still quite a few constraints, so we have to work within those constraints. One example is making sure that we have flooring that better meets our needs. So we have money. I think we use the word $50 million set aside for capital renovations between school improvement fund and the totality of the ESSER dollars. So here's one example of a capital project. Another one, responding to recommendations from a report to improve student safety, $1 million. And if approved, you likely will see that contract at next month's agenda meeting. Another piece, replacing and installing new outdoor learning spaces in 3 schools. If you've ever spent 10 minutes with 25 kindergartners, you know that they need to get outside and play and burn off some energy. And so that's a key part of being focused and learning throughout the day. So kids need good spaces to learn in school. They need good books, good teachers, but they also need good playgrounds to burn off some steam. So those are not all of the examples, but those are definitely some key ones that we wanted to share with you for your review and approval. So I'll take any questions if you have.
We have a full plan in the packet, so detail each plan area of expense, so certainly free to ask questions. Dr. Smith?
Yes, when you talk about outdoor learning spaces, and you talk about playground equipment, you talk about devoted to academics and city learning space.
Well, I think you can still say that playgrounds are an important part of academics too. Okay, so I would tie those directly together anyways.
Explain that to me.
Can I explain to you? Well, I tried to before in saying that, kids, physical education is part of our standards in Indiana. And there are lots of cool experiments and other physical activities. Kids don't just need to be in their classroom, sitting in a seat, passively learning. So it is one of the other things for making sure that it's accessible to kids with disabilities so that they can get outside. And then also when they come back in, they're better focused. And so you'll get a response to that.
I had never heard, and maybe I'm new with this, but I never heard those called learning spaces. I have heard of learning spaces that are outdoor.
Yeah.
And they're not just, they run up with, so I was trying to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, so one aspect you're talking about, picnic tables, you're talking about activities related to social emotional learning where kids can do those types of activities. So it absolutely is tied.
That's just, if you look at some outdoor learning spaces that they're different from playground, but that's why I asked the question. And then we move on to the extended day.
Okay.
Is it voluntary for teachers to be there, or is it mandated?
Yeah, we extended the day.
It's
expected for all to attend, yes.
Okay. And what about accountability for use of this money? Do you have to get approval from the feds in advance, or how you understand it, what's supposed?
No, it's in advance. So this actually has a large amount of accountability with it. We have to submit the proposal, which after 1 and 2 have already been submitted and received approval from IDOE. We have to submit in advance, and then we have to be able to show documentation because State Board of Accounts is going to come back later and say, did you do what you said you would do with the Indiana Department of Ed?
Given the fact that we just had, if we did experience a walkout to some degree, we were aware that there's some dissatisfaction related, stimulated by adults or children. The bottom line is, because they have identified some things that they are concerned about towards, where you're addressing it, are you going to address it first? Is it going to hurt the funds, or is it going to school?
Well, I would say in terms of that demonstration, anything that was addressed by kids, we definitely take to heart. Most of it, 99% of it, was not about toilets, not about bathrooms, and a lot of those things that they did express, yes, absolutely, you're in the middle.
Okay, but we do know that's a problem if I go on the west side and I've used it for the time to before myself, and my question to you is, are you building that into your plan anywhere?
So we do.
I don't see it in this time.
Well, this is ESSER, this is one pot of money, and that's one of the reasons.
Water fountains fit into ESSER, right?
Well, and I can get into the weeds, but I will, based on that question. So water fountains are okay because we adjusted water fountains because the CDC said, turn off your regular water fountains, you need water fountains. Any of you know that, after you watch kindergartners use water fountains, adults don't use them because you don't want to put your mouth where a bunch of other kindergartners put it. So we did switch to some bottle filler water fountains, which all of us would feel fine with putting our own water bottle there. And so that's an example of switching. And that was directly allowed because the CDC said turn them off and we needed a new kind. But in terms of toilets, that's not an answer because how does a toilet relate to the coronavirus pandemic? It doesn't. But we do have school improvement funds that, yes, we have the regular ability to refresh and fix toilets.
So maybe I missed it. Is any of this in either the report to the school improvement. For water companies, for needs for personnel.
Is there a line item for bathroom renovations in the 265?
I think it's,
I'm going back to look to see if there's a specific line item. I think some of those things are paint improvements and.
There's plumbing.
Some other things, plumbing improvements, I think those are all included in those.
Okay, and the reports that were made, the public appearances that were made through radio, WE, and did they tell the public that some of the public agreed? I mean, that where it is, that's in the budget.
That's in 1065, I'm sure we shared that numerous times on different platforms.
I don't think the message got down to the community yet. That is in the budget already. Because what I heard from the community is that it was denied, that they didn't know anything about it. And the community gave me 4 different occasions where you did know. And I won't take up time, I'll take up time if I got to prove the point. But they gave me 4 opportunities or experiences where the community was, I mean, the school corporation and its leaders were aware of the need.
To be, expressing on the radio programs, possible proposals, facilities and the improvements that were being done. I heard you say earlier about the, website being one of the areas that's lost general, but we have more than 8 mechanisms that we use to communicate with our various publics. So the website is only a piece of the pie. We do a monthly newsletters that go out on the first Friday, but it has all of our various updates for these Friday. In addition to our social media channels, we recognize everybody on social media, so we convert that content so they can see our Skyward student information system, as well as working with traditional media, radio, TV. When we're done today, sharing what was said here today, because we know that our public don't get their information the same way. And so for those who have said that they have seen this information, we invite the guests to the website and use that as a storage place for all press releases, every information that we share. We want to live in one central location so that that information is accessible at a later date if they can miss it. But I invite them to reach out to me directly if they are missing this information, so we can add this to our database so they can talk to us directly and say, we're going to provide this information, because that's the thing, the PR person doesn't want to hear somebody to say, I didn't know.
Okay, my question for you though is there the information that is shared that was maybe squashed the community concern, you say it's already built into the budget? I've never heard that anybody was talking about.
Okay, well then I can share what you do for the interviews that have been done with that.
Okay, I would like to know that, and I'll be more than glad to share with those people who complain. I don't like to see them complain, I don't want to look for them. Okay. But they expect me, knowing that I'm here to address, so I'm not bringing past them, but I'm saying, and I'm representing the will of this, people.
This meeting is about, again, for those who are listening, to find out more. This is how you do it, GarySchools.org, social media, newsletters, Skyward, convention.
But yes, we're aware there's a significant number of people in here that don't have access to computers or internet.
Absolutely, that's what we have.
we did 32,000 mailings about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Other questions, Dr. Smith? There is, I noticed we talked about this before, about $6.5 million to a classroom and furniture upgrade. Can you speak just about what you plan to do with that and what that might look like next week?
Yeah, gladly. So this actually was one of our most highly requested items from our staff and our kids about refreshing furniture and across the school. You all have been in our schools, and we can definitely welcome you back. You see a lot of mixed, matched, outdated, old, duct taped, broken, other types of furniture, and it's time for us to get an updated refresh. So we're talking about normal furniture that a school district would have anywhere in the state. We want to make sure our kids have that same opportunity if they were to go anywhere else. So we want to update it, make sure that it's easily used. So things like being able to put, tables together to make a small group pretty easily, having different types of seating. So that kids can work individually, small groups, large group, and so on. Yeah, so some that are higher, some that are lower. If you ever had the joy of reading to a kindergarten class, you want to have a rug where everyone can sit on it and listen to the teacher read or the guest speaker to read. So we want to make sure we've got rugs in each room. So if our classes need an update and a refresh, and we think now is the perfect time to do so.
Great. Other questions about items in the plan?
Well, yeah, I was very impressed with it as well. I have more of a comment, Mr. Chairman, to the folks. Gary, first slide, I think if my math is right, is total about $1,800 and it was ongoing costs or it appeared to be. And I'm just going to make a comment that just not only in Gary, but every school system in the state, as well as every taxing unit in the state, that these extra dollars are going away. And every one of these tax units has a cliff. It's not Gary, it's not Griffith, it's not IBS. It's everybody. And so I just want to be very cautious. Want us to be very cautious about how, we need to do what we need to do now. Right? We need to take care of the cattle, we need to take care of the furniture, we need to take care of the fields, we need to take care of everything, okay? But when we're coming, in 2025, this happened once. This happened once before, back in 2008, 2009, right? When the feds just pumped money into the system. And all of a sudden, just completely shut off. It didn't slowly turn off. It turned completely off overnight.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think with the department dollars from that time frame, we've been very strategic to, like, for example, you don't see in the plan for us to hire 50 new classroom teachers. We could with this money, but how are we going to sustain that after? And then it also creates a short-term change of expectations with that. So when we have put in staff, we put it in for staff that we know, hey, I'm going to retire in 2 years, and we're building up to that and handling the capacity now. But we're also doing staff.
Yeah, it goes to our sustainability.
Oh, yeah.
We need turns back to the residents, to the parents here in a sustainable manner.
Yeah.
Thank you for thinking about that.
You're welcome.
Or questions or comments about the plan? I do appreciate the work that you have all done on this. It's a tremendous effort. So we look forward to hearing about it. This is one of those items that we do need to take action on as a board. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the plan if there is such a will.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the ESSER plan as presented by Gary Community School Corporation.
Could I ask that we also amend the motion to invite the corporation to provide us with updates on a regular basis to be determined?
I would amend my motion to that effect. Second.
All right. People.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Joy?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rocky? Rebecca, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Yes. Very good. And Chairman McAdams?
Yes.
That's 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item of business is the capital plan. This isn't really new information, but rather just a comprehensive presentation of a couple of buckets of information to give us a more comprehensive picture of the investment that's being made in facilities and the capital infrastructure at Gary Community Schools is an important part, both for this board and the community to understand the significant work that's being done across the district to make the district more competitive, bring it up to par, on par with other districts and every other district in the state, and put it in a position to succeed in the future.
Nicole, are you kicking off?
So just as you stated, Chairman, this is a comprehensive plan. We recognize that there are an intensity-wide limitations on the time frame that need to be set. So how are we going to address the needs of our facilities and other capital improvements past that time frame? So this is kind of our first stab of a fluid document that is going to change and work into some things over the years as we continue to spend those other funds first. But this is, those recognized items that we need to focus on that will involve other funding sources in future years.
So this first slide has, this is in your packet. We've projected out the next 10 years. And I think this is important because there's a shelf life of the ESSER funds. So we can't depend upon those past. Currently, we don't have the authority to encumber or contract past September 2024. We have the school improvement funds, which is a mechanism set up to put money into for the next 5 years. But a normal operating plan is going to have capital project renovations for much longer than the next 5 years. You've got to project out. So like this week, Nicole and I are talking with our building manager because he's like, we need to fix these newer roofs so that they last longer, so that we don't have to replace them sooner. So those pieces. So that was the impetus behind this document. We have multiple funding streams that play into it over time. So in your packet, you have it broken up by year. And you also have it broken up by school, as well as the source of the funding. So we've tried to detail the school improvement fund today as approved, the ESSER plan draft now approved, by category so that you can see each individual activity, how we're paying for it, when we're projecting to do it. And then other needs that we know we're going to need to carry out and address well after those two funding streams are gone. The next slide, if you'll, from 21 to 2030, we're projecting 64.7 million in capital improvements. This is all across the district, not just at the high school, not just at the career center, but we have plans in place for the elementary schools, the preschool, and the middle as well. Annual expenses range, higher now because we do have those dollars that have the shorter shelf life and it's to tailing off once we get closer to 2030. And then you can see that we do have substantial investments in multiple schools. It's not just at one any specific school.
Thank you. I did have one question as I look at the by year allocation. 2025 is listed as zero aggregate. What's driving?
Yeah, so I think one part, and then we talked about ESSER being 2024, school improvement fund runs through there. And then once you hit that point, the rest of the years are the other. The typical school district pays for these activities by issuing bonds. And so right now, I'm not asking for more bonds to be issued. I think the point is that we need a plan like this to drive the ability to do that. And so around that time frame, we know we still have capital needs then on after ESSER and school improvement funds are done. And so the discussion will be, we have to make sure we issue bonds so that we then can afford the work in later years. So, depending on how things play out, we obviously could issue bonds and pay for a lot of those activities 2024, and there would be activities in 2025. We just don't want to count the chickens before they hatch.
So if I understand it, the plan contemplates not only the expenditure of these federal dollars in 1065, but looking forward to preservation and maintenance and continued investment in the district at And obviously, it's hard to predict what the right level is this far in advance, but that's what we're attempting to do.
Right, yeah, I mean, as the roof example, the 3 roofs that we're looking at addressing soon are not currently leaking. You know, no one's complaining about them. But we know we need to do something about them so that we don't have to replace them much sooner. So, yeah, we definitely need not just capital additions, but we need a renovation schedule in this place at the time.
Eric, you look like you're, towards the side.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it's what you're saying, you're correct if I'm maybe misunderstanding. You're looking at each facility and we're looking at it from not only what it needs now, but what it's projected.
And then 3 years from now.
3, 5, 10 years down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to that, and kind of bring it back full circle to the debt from the big conversation earlier this morning. Debt is not the enemy. So let's talk about reducing the debt. The goal is not zero, especially in the Indiana school maintenance. And the debt levy, this is a call touched on frequently. It's a piece of pie. We part pieces of pie shrinks. We may never get that piece of the pie back. So let's not be afraid of that. And let's not be fearful of yours to say you might take out bonds later in the future. Second part is a good school district or public sector agency will manage its debt load as debt comes down and eventually gets paid off. You replace that debt. So you're essentially staying flat, but you're always in an improvement mode. So that it all ties together.
It's just not enough cash in the system for you to put the money aside for a rainy day. In that large, for a capital project, for a large maintenance project, like roofs on school buildings.
That's not very specific.
Right.
Well-managed organization uses debt.
Yeah, so I mean, as you well know, your operations funds can pay for $20, $50 million projects. You know, that's just not how it works in the end. So you have to take advantage of your education fund, your operations, and your bonds, your debt levies, and that's what this plays into.
One more question. In terms of figuring out and benchmarking what that sort of future investment level should be, who are we working with? What efforts are you working with? Other schools, et cetera, to figure out what the right level of investment would be, what that program should look like.
Yeah. We're starting to do that. I think we'll take our first cut at it, then in between expertise to bring that in. You know, it's been a series of hurdles, like the hurdle we announced today allows us to sit down and make something just like that, which in the past we would have done.
We have several companies that we've been talking.
Yeah, I encourage you to talk to association school business officials, I'm sure.
Yes.
On a regular basis, but obviously, you know, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, which is what we're some people else don't do. But, you know, certainly learn what they're doing.
What does the federal government say about investing this money if you need to use it so that you get some interest that you have more money to be used? Is there any regulation on that as to how it is? Did you know?
There is, and I can't necessarily quote it specifically, but typically, municipal units are allowed to invest in.
I'm not talking about investment, I'm interested in saving for the $21.
The real quick question is, there's some CVs opportunities out there. There might be some, very liquid, very safe, secure, AAA, instruments, but there are one there. And even today's, rates,
And I think
one basis point maybe.
yeah, I mean, the announcement today, I think allows us to start a rainy day fund, to look at savings, to build our cash reserves. So we're in a place now that we can be proactive instead of reactionary. So I think those are things on the horizon, but to Mr. Bennett's point, it's not being a large amount of interest there.
Yeah, we got $2 million in setups now, we may have What are you on about?
So if you don't mind me jumping in, because I think you said federal, you're talking about the ESSER dollars that are yet to be used?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, that's the thing, they're not just saying, like, they make decisions about it.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to clarify. So the way it works, Tracy at IDEA, we did not cut us the $72 million check. And we've been budgeting, the state has the money, and so we only, yeah. But in Tracy's defense, because I think she's gonna jump immediately when I say this, Tracy can only ask for it from the feds when I ask for it from her. So the US federal government has the money. And it's odd. As a piece of paper. So it's on a reimbursement basis. We do not have that money sitting in the account. We have to budget it, ask for approval, spend our own money. I have to ask the pool to pay for it up front, and then I ask for it back.
And then I want to pick up on a point that Nicole made, because this is an important tie back to the conversation we had about the DRP, which is just because we have a surplus, we're showing a surplus today, doesn't mean that we've solved the financial challenges. It's we put ourselves in a position to continue to solve. There are negative fund balances that remain that need to be shored up, and Paul and his team will have I see those come off the report. But then also building those reserves. Gary is among the lowest in the state, as you would expect for a district in its financial shape, when it comes to cap reserves, so that it doesn't have rainy day funds to handle ups and downs.
Chairman, this story has to be told and retold, because the community doesn't understand it, because when I'm stopping in grocery stores, I'm stopping in pharmacies and everywhere else, and as I listen to the operating stations, people don't understand, and they say, we got this, and we got all this extra money, and if I don't know, I can't ever have a school operation back. That's the question.
Well, and I'll pick up on that a couple, because I think it's important for those who are listening. There's a couple of things there with that. Same issue the state and local governments are facing, and private businesses. We're in a high inflation environment right now, and so the fact that we have a surplus today doesn't mean we'll have a surplus tomorrow. We could inflate our way out of that. The other piece of that is that, as you well know, while this board has the power to release the district from distressed status when certain conditions are met, at this point, there is no one to give the district back to. There is no governing body for us to hand that district off to. And so what the important point of that is the legislature really has an obligation here at some point in the future. That they will need to make a decision about what the future of Gary Schools governance is going to look like. And as you know, we began a conversation about that during this past session. That conversation is yet to be completed, and I think it will be one that we'll continue to have into the next year.
I do have a couple of points I'm going to make from this meeting of the next report and the others. If you look at page 5, the community has expressed, at least I hear that on radio, that there's superficial things that need done for West Side School, paint, logos and things that are identified on this 2020-21 review. They would like to see more remodeling done. Certainly our bathrooms at IU West, but not in the state of bathrooms at West Side. That building dates back to the 60s, I think. And they want to see remodeling done, not just paint, superficial things. And so I'm stressing that community. And I'm on page 6, I have a question. If you look at the project added to the SIF, you got Westside Leadership and football field and bleacher painting. And then next to the bottom, 3 up, it says Westside Leadership and football field bleachers upgrade. What's the difference between the two? What was done outside? All this stuff was pretty much painting.
Well, we can, that kind of jumps into the next item on the docket here.
It is.
Fund.
We're not in there?
Not quite.
It's all right. It's just like this.
There's a lot of capital and a lot of dollars. Well, why don't we go ahead and move to that? So we have a request to approve a modification to the school improvement fund. This is the 10 Household Act and 65 fund that was created a couple of years ago that we discussed here today. You want to give us an update on where it stands and what we're asking for in terms of changes?
So one of the major changes in the school improvement is that we created a control document that ties back each expenditure to a project ID. So you'll see, I think there's a little bit of the next column that identifies it has ID numbers, so A, B, C, D, it's listed with the project. You can tie back those control expenses to the original document.
The control document is updated one you get back. Once.
So in the student edition, we were able to pull out all the things that we were able to like master dollars and other funding sources. So we narrowed down specifically the capital improvement projects in intensity as well as we realize now as we're kind of going through some of these project updates, HVAC, plumbing, things like that. There are project contingencies that come up, emergency repairs, professional fees that are associated with whether it's architect fees or things like that. As these projects unfold, we continue to make those improvements. So we kind of reallocated some of those funds. That last bucket, which in June was your phase 8, we kind of renamed to ongoing projects because we're understanding that those are kind of morphing into different things as we discover the different upgrades with plumbing and HVAC that need to be done school-wide. But for the most part, all the projects have stayed the same. We haven't been able to reallocate money with some more ADA compliance items. Again, architect fees, new locks and doors, abatement and things like that. We have also reallocated knowing that, we're only able to draw down about $460,000 a month from the suspension of common school loans that we need to kind of build our pot, if you will. So when we do have those larger expenditures like our swimming pool, as that's in the design phase now, going out for our RFP, that we will have the funding to take that out for that. So that's, $1 million, $2 million, whatever that may be, we have the funding staged already that we pay for those expenses. So today, from the beginning of the 1065 fund, we've drawn down about $8.6 million in receipts from school loans, and we spent about $4.5. So I think since our last meeting, I think we approved November claims, if I'm not mistaken. So we take action tonight to approve from December to through January, which was about $1.6 million that isn't spent. So we have about 4.1 left over, and then we've got a number of projects in the queue. She'll take the next couple of months to come for approval for you guys. More roofing renovations and, swimming pools and things like that. So got definitely more to come, but this is kind of a yearly step back. We needed to design some things to get our architects on board and really make sure that we're consistently staying on plan until 2025.
And just for the board's understanding, the control document is something we asked for and worked, Pete and Nicole worked on. To your point, Dr. Smith, we saw a gap in our information, nothing intentional on either side, but the need for better information to be able to better keep track of how the funds are being spent to ensure that we have the confidence that the money is being spent appropriately and consistent with what we would expect.
Has there been a plan design that constantly comes up, what it costs to completely renovate the toilets, urinals, the sinks with touchless urinals, sinks, and toilets? Lots of schools are using this for almost that. Yes, we can be used for that.
So as for touchless, have we come up with a design for it?
There's no design. to fix all toilets.
No, there is money for the ability to do that in the school improvement funds. But we haven't, in terms of ESSER dollars, specifically with touchless spending.
Because it seems to be an issue, constantly gets brought up. They're substituted.
I would suggest that you may want to look at what IU, as I said, IU has renovated this bath, at least in the building that I'm in, that's Rainy Tree.
There are school systems in our state that are using that $3 to do that.
And your hands and the water comes on, you don't have to touch anything, you ride and it's got heat coming up every sink there's, you can dry your hands, get your hands, get the soap, I mean, everything, you don't touch anything.
Yeah, so I mean, that info, you obviously are a beneficiary to the entire state's plans and their use of ESSER $3. That's something that was news to me. Just now. Yeah, so to my knowledge, we couldn't, but, yeah, so, I will cite, Mr. Paul Royce. Said that they could, and I talked with our DOE section.
Could I ask about, there's one item here that I had a question about. As I look at the new items added, and I'm sorry, we didn't get a chance to talk about it beforehand, but there's an item listed as power washing buildings. And I think that more as maintenance and not investing in our facilities. Tell me about what we're doing there and maybe why.
I think we had included, and I don't mean to speak if you're attacking, but if you leave some of that there, it can deteriorate and have a negative effect on the exterior of the building. So that's where we thought that it was allowable because it led to faster deterioration, and then obviously a desire for it to look better.
How much is that? I actually didn't go to track to see the dollar amount.
It's a minimal amount. I don't think it's a lot in there. Off the top of my head, to pull it up, I think it's 50 or 75,000.
And I think it's gonna be dependent on school size and the area of school that needs to be done. If it's on the meeting or just specific on this certain size.
I would like to see us build those kinds of things into an ongoing maintenance budget that's part of our normal operating budget and not part of our capital funds. So, this is minimal in this particular instance, but if we think about that going forward, I think we have to have both.
Right. Makes sense.
Other questions regarding the proposal, the proposal to revise this plan, concerns or questions about what's the proposal? And just as a reminder to those who might be paying attention, we started with a plan that was much more focused on some of the bigger ticket items in the district back when we began this project in 2020. But because of the ESSER funds and the flexibility that those provide, we swapped a lot of those projects. So the boilers and roofs and the HVAC system, a lot of that was moved to ESSER, just as a reminder, and some of the more some of the other up on the lighter things that are more beautification and important aspects of the district, but we moved here because of the flexibility that this fund provides. So just so that folks understand we're doing both, and I hope the capital plan shows that. But we're touching all aspects of the district. That entertain a motion to approve the plan.
I think it was to approve the plan as presented. And then.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All right, any discussion on the motion? Call roll.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Kubaki?
Yes.
Chairman McAdam?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Right, thank you. And the other item of housekeeping that we need to do on this is we need to approve the, I guess we call it the claims docket that's here. We number, it's gotten lengthy as we've been haven't met for several months. But we do need to approve that particular aspect of the 65 plans. That's included in that. Is there a motion to approve the control document? Or I'm sorry, the claims document?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we would approve the claim document as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, Pete, call roll.
Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Kubaki?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, our next item is this is the bond refinances that was referenced earlier. Cool.
As I guess Mr. Parrish mentioned earlier, we have an opportunity to present to you guys us continuing to be good stewards of our money. And an opportunity to have potential cost savings in refinancing our 2012 Series E bonds. That would save about $100,000 in interest each year. So over the life of the bonds. So right now, we're about $9.1 million. Refinancing would be interest $640,000. These are some preliminary schedules. Obviously, if this is approved, in the next month or two, you'll have some more solidified schedules along with bond resolutions and more housekeeping items to actually do with our financial later. But this is definitely an opportunity for your schools to capture some technical costs.
Are you looking for us to, do I hear you say you're not ready for us to approve anything at this point?
It's more of a approval to initiate with our bond counsel and our financial advisor the opportunity to initiate the refinance.
And then you would bring the final refinancing back to us. Any questions about this item? Well, I think it's great that you're going to save $100,000 a year in interest. It's a great opportunity. It certainly seems to me that there's not a good reason to take advantage of it. We talked about variable interest. Are these fixed or variable? The refinancing to be fixed or variable? That I mean,
Consent to move forward, or you need one more motion?
well, I think it's just because we have a mix. Just take a motion.
I would so move that we would allow them to move forward with the refunding of the 2012 Series E bond.
Guys, did a great duty today. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right.
Mr. Bennett? Yes. Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Kubaki?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a 5-0.
Thank you. I'm going to skip item 12 on the agenda, which is the update of contract from the executive director, and move to item 13. We have 5 contracts presented to us that require the executive director's threshold for approval and require our consideration. We have one regarding the purchase of additional iPads and additional Chromebooks related to one-on-one computing effort. We have one related to the ESSER plan for maker spaces. And then we have 2 related to gymnasiums and football fields that are tied, I think, to the civic plan. All those contracts, rather than take them individually, I'm going to just offer the opportunity for discussion on all of them at once. So if you would introduce them, if there's anything you'd like to say about them, then we can take questions together.
Sure. So the next slide has a highlight. Makerspace is not a term that everyone knows. So we're going to briefly show you, a picture of a student in action. In this case, they're using a fuel cell, robotics. If you've ever heard the term robotics, project-based learning, 3D printing, coding, computer science was a topic that was added to our mandated state curriculum by the governor a couple of years ago. And so all of those things are encompassed in Makerspace. You really could say project-based learning, inquiry learning. It's research-based. As you've heard, 3 of our schools either are trying or will be or have been STEM certified. And that's a big win for us because, it's not just, attractive to families, but it really impacts how we teach. That worksheets and drill and kill is not the only way to learn, that you can give kids projects that they can do differently. So Makerspace is really taking advantage of that. So that's that first project. And then the other four we have here, just as a brief summary. You heard at our last in-person event where we got Emergency Connectivity Fund, DCF, from the federal government. And so that's paying for the refresh of those materials, and then new bleachers in the gym at Westside Leadership. This is going to help us with accessibility issues because they will be ADA compliant. But obviously, we use our gym for more than just athletics. We use it for music events. We can use it for convocations for kids. Graduations, there are multiple options. So we need functioning bleachers that meet our kids' needs. So there's that project. And then lastly, the football field, you all approved almost a year ago, several other updates for the football field. And this coincides with that. We've been doing other updates there, and this is gonna, keep it safer, make the track able to be used at different times. Having home night, Friday night lights is a cool event, no matter where you live in Indiana. So we need some lights to have Friday night lights. So that's that project.
Question? Not that this is a project, but you constantly hear about connectivity issues. Does any of these address that connectivity issues that are going on?
Connectivity with internet and.
Usually what I hear is like students that are trying to log in and do something.
Right. So we do have a couple pieces. One, you all in the past few months have approved UPSs. You also approved switches, network switches, either this board directly or with with Pete. And those definitely get to the connectivity issues. You also approved access points, having multiple access points. So we've put a lot of time and energy behind those, and many of them have already approved.
And then in addition, the mayor is actually working on enhancing the fiber within the city, and our IT directors on that committee with them, so that they're trying to enhance connectivity throughout the whole city, because there are.
Yeah, it's still amazing how much it can be.
Yes.
Just still shocked that 2 years after we started the pandemic, it does exist.
Yes.
Question, I answered from a little. What is our return rate on that? Teachers have indicated that students are not returning and then not get back to school. Is that the case? And so how are we looking at that?
Yeah, so a couple pieces. I mean, we tag them, we assign them to kids, we do inventory of them. Of course, you are going to have issues with certain kids not bringing them back, but it's not an extremely high rate. It's a manageable one. Our classrooms are still outfitted with the appropriate amount of technology, but similar to assigning a textbook to a kid, you assign a Chromebook or an iPad to a kid too, and we have individual agreements there.
Is it valuable that some of your learning days or days that you force time? I'm a little confused between the learning and instructional days and technology, but the bottom line is that some students did not have equipment at home to participate.
No, that's factual.
You didn't have shortage of home kids that did not have computers in their house.
No, I mean, we've, over the past few years, we purchased plenty of devices to be one-on-one. These new devices are not to make it where we have one-to-one. This is to replenish or refresh as devices get outdated, and as we do get some that are broken that we fix. But this is not to make it where we have one-to-one.
That's part of my question, how do you hold parents accountable?
Yeah, so there are several ways. I mean, a typical district, and one that we're working on as well, is you assign a device to a kid. And obviously accidents happen, sometimes adults, myself, I've broken my own Gary issued device on accident. Yeah, I'm sorry. So accidents happen, obviously we work with families, but anytime that they're, and we do have a warranty to be able to get things fixed, as well. We do have a process, and in any district, if there was negligence, yes, if there's negligence.
So there is a dollar amount that's assigned to each hotspot and laptop, and it's a repeat offender or something of that nature, and we do try to make the parents pay that, because our free and reduced status is not something that we are comfortable with or can really want to prevent a student having to really have that would prevent them from learning in any of that other students are. So it's not something that we are holding them accountable for in the sense of punishing them, they might not receive another one, but we are doing our best to try to make them pay if that's an option for them.
And then like kind of products are you, what they, and then they go over time. If they're not on the status, allow them to put it against the tax rolls or something. Free reduces will allow them to do anything. Right, so I don't know what the agency was about, the process of
Other questions regarding these contracts?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Regarding the makerspace contract, I'd like to hear the plan for this. The quote or the contract we have is mostly involving furniture and materials, and I'd like to hear about the plan for all of this, if I could.
Yes. Yeah, so I think it goes to our STEM certification, which goes hand in hand. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so 3 of our schools are going for, and we talked about maybe getting a visit from the state. And part of that is a physical space has to be set up to allow students to do the type of STEM work that we want them to be able to do, and being able to have the maker space allows for that.
Tracy, did I understand your question more around what's the programming that's going to go with this contract?
Exactly, yes. How many students will be able to participate and make use of this space? Will all teachers be trained? That sort of thing.
Yes, teachers will be trained and it will be a building-wide usage, so all of the students will be able to utilize those spaces for learning that happens in the STEM classes, which can be throughout the building. So the reading, the math, science, social studies, all work together in the project.
Will there be a dedicated class? So I think about my own kids' school, one of their specials, in addition to music and art and gym, is STEM. And they have makerspace type activities.
Right. And so at the middle school, we have dedicated spaces. At our elementary, we have makerspace type activities in any of the classes.
Other questions or comments? All right. We can take these contracts together. If we make a motion to approve them as presented. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the contracts for the iPads transfer, for Chromebooks, first makerspaces, Intercol gymnasium bleachers, Musco sports lighting, football field.
After the minutes to say an amount not greater than what's different.
Yes. And then say the amount greater than what was presented.
Is there a second, Mr. Bennett?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. Call the roll.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Kabaki?
Yes.
Chairman McAdams?
Yes.
5-0.
All right. Thank you. We have one final item, which is an update from the executive director regarding 4 contracts that he has approved in the interim since our last.
So the 4 contracts that were, 2 I approved in January, both were related to educational software. The first was close education. That also includes professional development. That was more focused on learning loss, remediation type of activities, and that was funded through Title I. The other software was from IXL, and that was just kind of a more general curriculum for math and language arts. They did write a curriculum, which was fun. In February, there was a purchase of band uniforms, and that was funded out of the revenue fund. And lastly, just last week, I authorized a record digitization project partnership where some paper records are scanned and OCR processes form them into digital format. That was paid for through SRT.
Don't go back to band uniforms, that's a big issue.
We're really excited about the band uniforms. So, we had students look at a bunch of different options as well as our band director was phenomenal. And, they were able to narrow it down, pick out some band uniforms, and they are en route. In the process of that, though, we were able to find lots of old band uniforms. And so we've been resurrecting them, and so the kids have been having those on display. It's been a pretty neat experience.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you expect to have those yet this year, or will it be next year before the kids have that?
No, it is anticipated, this fall, but, I hate to say with everything else with the pandemic,
Sitting in
timelines and.
Sitting in containers or something.
Yeah, so, about everything is, I hope, or I think, but yeah, we do believe and look forward to it in this calendar year.
Is there any new business to come before the board today? Dr. Smith?
Well, I had a question about school.
You didn't get there, so come back.
So, my question is, on page 36, the chart shows the 10% progress. And then when we go to page 40, it shows different rates of completion.
Is there a particular project?
Well, no, I'm just looking at page 36 and the several pages where it shows 0%. Then when you get 40%, when you get to page 40, it says completion rate 100% of the board. Well, yeah. Let's take the GMS4. This person on page 40 is 100%, 0% on, I may not be following your.
No,
I was saying there's some appendices or additional attachments to the school improvement plan that's included in your packet that are the older revisions of it, so that may be a old percentage of completion. So the new should be one of the first documents.
Well, no, the first document is 0%, and then page 40 says 100%.
But the first one is from Appendix D, which is from the June 2020 plan. I'll make sure that I clarify that a little bit.
It's kind of confusing. My next question is, what is the status of what's the Haskell auditorium?
So the seats, the seats have been ordered. And they will all be refurbished this summer. We have to wait for school out.
So they're not seats, they're first.
They're all gonna be redone, right?
And my next question, because I shared the project Break School when they took bricks and they gave so many bricks to I had responsibility to get plates put on it and metal plates put on. Some people just wanted the brick, other people wanted a picture of the school one brick. the community, because these alumni have been coming in and asking me because they knew I did that project for April. We went with get bricks, and I saw you said there's going to be a ceremony.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if the ceremony could include, for example, what we did was, percentage of the bricks that everyone that was approved, played on, went to the school foundation fund. Percentage of it.
Yes.
I don't hear much about it, but, can you set up something like that, alumni, I don't think the official group was small, group with them that asked for this. What school corporation did then, they gave us 200 bricks to the group. For the service. We need to know whether that's what company and it will get my manager, my store on the back, she asked me about it constantly.
Okay, certainly, like all of what you just certainly, we are working, I know Chelsea's been working with the Alumni Foundation, and we are doing a ceremony in April. We are going to be giving away hundreds of bricks, and we have more, so if we want to work with the Alumni Foundation to give them some of the plates, we can do that. And then we also have another special announcement that day that I can do.
Okay. And I guess that's what I like to say.
You have any business to somebody looking forward today? Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Justin, this is Rebecca. Can I just say something real quickly?
Yeah, please.
I just want to applaud Dr. Minolti and her team for having endured 3.5 hours of questioning and how professional and prepared they were. And I just want to thank them for spending the time and being prepared and answering our questions. And on the last note, I know they have challenges, but if you want some uplifting material, just check their Facebook. And there's always wonderful things posted on there. So just my comments.
Thank you. I second. All right, we are adjourned.